Chapter 347, Defeating Xing Lai. Gasps of shock arose from the audience. The 7 sons of Ao family could all be claimed to have a well-known reputation, and the Winter Moon sect had high expectations of them. Furthermore, in the history of the whole sect, very rarely had there ever appeared 7 brothers who had such high ranking at the same time. However, 5 out of them were defeated, 1 admitted defeat on his own, and if even Xing Lai was unable to defeat Ling Han, then the 7 sons of Ao family would become a complete joke. And they were defeated by the same person on the same day. Both Ling Han and Xing Lai took a few steps back. One had a hand on his ribs, whereas the other had one hand pressing down on his face. The lone wolf's blood continued to circulate, and Ling Han once again charged forth. He continued to circulate the indestructible heaven scroll to heal his injuries, intending to defeat Xing Lai in one go. As his cultivation level rose, the power upgrade that the lone wolf's blood could provide had become less and less, and now, it could only give him a power upgrade of around 1 battle star's worth of battle prowess, but every little bit counted. The slightest bit of power upgrade was still something useful. Xing Lai's expression was filled with shock. He had purposely held 1 flash of sword chi back and attacked Ling Han when he was off guard, but he actually only managed to seriously wound his opponent. No, that couldn't really be considered as a serious wound, but only a slightly heavier injury, that was all. Meanwhile, Ling Han's counterattack was to give him a harsh punch, which smacked 2 teeth out of his mouth. However, there was no time left for him to be shocked at the moment, as Ling Han quickly followed up with another punch, and he could only react. With a wave of his sword, 7 flashes of sword chi suddenly emerged in a dance. Since he had already revealed his trump card, there was no longer any necessity to hide anything else. With the upgrade provided by the Black Star Sword, the 7 flashes of sword chi possessed a shockingly swift and fierce might. Ling Han gave it his very best, and with the help of the Eye of Truth, he managed to dodge 6 flashes of sword chi, but was still unable to completely dodge the 7th, which left another wound on his leg. However, Ling Han acted as if he had not felt a thing. Peng, another punch was delivered, which crashed into Xing Lai's face. This was completely using his own injuries to exchange for injuring his opponent. In the eyes of everyone, the Black Star Sword was extremely sharp, and was also a level 5 spirit tool, possessing martial intent that could completely dominate the spiritual ocean tier, so no matter how strong Ling Han's determination was, how many times could he continue to exchange his own injuries for injuring his opponent? If Ling Han did not change his strategy, then he would only be continuously wounded severely by Xing Lai, and finally lose his ability to battle. Yet they did not know that Ling Han had the indestructible heaven scroll. With that, ordinary injuries could be healed instantly. He also had 3 drops of indestructible true fluid, which could allow him to recover 3 times from a state of heavy injury. What kind of concept was that? That meant he was practically a monster that could not be killed. Moreover, he also had a sliver of divine sense from the heaven tier, and how easy would it be for him to dispel the martial intent that a level 5 spirit tool brought with it? If any other person was wounded even once by the Black Star Sword, even if it was just a flash of sword chi, they would be bleeding endlessly or even have their spirit completely destroyed. Otherwise, why would spirit tools be so feared? To Ling Han, the only advantage that the Black Star Sword had was that it was slightly sharper than normal. And it was extremely sharp, even his body of rock cliff was unable to block it. Peng! 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 The two continued to use their own injuries to exchange for wounding their opponent. Though Ling Han was completely covered by injuries and had a pale face due to losing a large amount of blood, Xing Lai did not look that much better. There was not much difference between his face and a pig's face. In other words, even if Xing Lai was able to emerge victorious from this battle, that was not something he should be proud of either. Not only had he depended on the might of a spirit tool, but his whole face had been thrashed until it resembled a pig's face, so he had completely lost all face. Most importantly, Xing Lai might not even win. They could see as Ling Han continued to take alchemical pills, and forcibly suppressed the injuries on his body. From the look of things now, he could still continue to stand fast for a very, very long time. Ling Han was naturally only putting up a pretense by taking alchemical pills. He had no intention of letting anyone know that he had a strong recovery ability. Anyways, he had already said that he had an alchemist as his master, and he could even afford to give out whole bottles worth of returned spirit pills, so it would not be something too strange for him to have a large amount of healing pills on him. This scene made that elite of spiritual pedestal tier look hesitant, not knowing if he should step out and cease the battle or not. If things continued this way, both of them could very possibly be cripped at the end of the day. If that really happened, then even he could not absolve himself from blame. And while he was hesitating, Ling Han and Ao Xinglai had already exchanged another dozen fierce blows. Ao Xinglai was throwing up blood and his body staggered. Though he was in the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, he did not have the supreme recovery ability like the indestructible heaven scroll, and now that he had been on the receiving end of multiple punches at Ling Han's hand, how could he remain unscathed? He was now only forcing himself to stay standing with his willpower. He could not lose, he definitely couldn't lose. He was the head of the 7 sons of Ao family and he had inherited the Black Star Sword, so he could only be glorious for his whole life. Yet why was his sight becoming blurrier? Ao Xinglai's whole face was covered with blood which had blurred his eyes, and his determination was also wavering. If anyone had received multiple punches by an opponent within the same cultivation level, how could they not be dizzy and have blurred eyes? Everyone understood his current condition. Even if Ao Xinglai, too, took some alchemical pills, it would still take some time for the medicine to take effect. Furthermore, medicine was only medicine, it was not a divine pill. This was confusing to everyone, because Ling Han was obviously more severely wounded, yet he was still very active now. Though he was completely bathed in blood, his condition was better than Ao Xinglai's by an unknown number of times. Could it be that the pills that this brat had taken were really divine pills? I will not lose, I will not. Ao Xinglai's feet stumbled, determination was keeping him upright. He definitely could not allow himself to pass out. He was Ao Xinglai, and he definitely could not lose against an opponent of the same cultivation level. That kind of fighting spirit unavoidably made everyone impressed. It was one matter whether or not Ao Xinglai was a likable person, but this stubborn willpower was something worth praise, and even Ling Han nodded internally in approval. However, they were on different sides. Furthermore, this involved the Thunder Battle armor, so he could not possibly stop. For the sake of your fighting spirit. Ling Han once again delivered a punch. Ao Xinglai had trouble even standing, so how could he possibly dodge or even parry this attack? Instantly, Ling Han's fist crashed into his chest. I shall gift you with a dignified loss. Peng, Ao Xinglai crashed heavily onto the ground, and was completely unable to get back up again. No matter how strong his determination was, there was a limit to it. The 9 successive battles had ended, and Ling Han had a result of 9 victories and 0 losses, so he was undoubtedly the champion. Very good. Now, you may all return to rest, and tomorrow, we shall award the prizes, that elite of spiritual pedestal tier announced. He was also relieved. Though Ao Xinglai was very severely thrashed, he ultimately did not suffer any heavy injuries that he could not recover from. Junior brother Han, come and play at my place. Yu Kai-yu immediately approached and offered Ling Han an invitation. Putting aside the fact that Ling Han had given him 3 bottles of return origin pills, just the fact that Ling Han had defeated all 7 sons of Ao family was enough to make Yu Kai-yu treat him as a friend. Ling Han said, let me clean myself up a bit before I head over to senior brother Yu's place. Of course. Of course. Yu Kai-yu quickly nodded. Ling Han was completely covered in blood at the moment and cut a very sorry figure, so he naturally had to take a bath and put on clean clothes. Ling Han returned to his accommodations at the Rising Sword Peak and directly entered the Black Tower. He cleaned himself up and ate a stalk of 100-year ginseng to nourish his body before heading to look for Yu Kai-yu. He wanted to probe for some information about his mother from the latter. Chapter 348, Worming Facts. Yu Kai-yu was very enthusiastic, and had prepared drinks in his personal courtyard early on. The moment he saw Ling Han, he said, "Junior brother Han, quick, please, 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 you're not going home till you're drunk." Ling Han laughed. "If I'm drunk, what do I do if I don't remember the way back?" "Then just stay for the night," Yu Kai-yu said without the slightest bit of hesitation. "This place that brother Yu is staying, TSK, TSK, TSK. Ling Han seemed to be very envious. This was not the rising sword peak, but rather halting peak among the 7 peaks. It could be ranked second in terms of having the most abundant spiritual qi. Naturally, only extremely talented members of the younger generation like Yu Kai-yu and the 7 sons of Ao family were qualified to stay here, whereas the elites of the spiritual pedestal, the flower blossom, and the spiritual infant tears could stay on White Cloud Peak, which had the densest spiritual qi. With the talent that Junio brother Han has, it would be a piece of cake for you to get your own courtyard on the halting peak. Yu Kai-yu patted Ling Han's shoulder. Come, come, come. Drink. Drink. Yu Kai-yu's courtyard was very quiet. Aside from a single scholar boy, there was no one else, which was proof enough that Yu Kai-yu had his complete focus on martial arts, without any other unnecessary thoughts. From this aspect, Ao Feng was indeed a genius. He was an absolute womanizer, yet his cultivation could soar all the way up to the spiritual pedestal tier, and now, he already had 1 foot in the flower blossom tier, which was indeed something to be impressed about. Ling Han had the intention to worm information about his mother out of Yu Kai-yu, so he began to engage in a drinking competition with the latter. If he managed to get the latter drunk, then it would naturally be easy for him to ask his questions. "Come, I'll have a cup and you have one too, and whoever does not drain his cup is a bastard," Ling Han declared, raising his cup in a toast. "You have 1, and I'll have 2. Yu Kai-yu said very generously. However, without waiting too long, he was already having a headache, and his body was swaying. He was already half drunk, and there was completely no need for Ling Han to encourage him to drink as he had already filled his own wine cup continuously. "Cousin, so sorry," Ling Han thought to himself. The wine that he had drank had directly entered the Black Tower, so naturally, no matter how much he drank, there was no way he could be drunk. When he saw Yu Kai-yu was already drunk and his eyes had turned hazy, he asked, "Senior brother disciple Yue, don't you have any siblings?" "And none. My dad only had me," Yu Kai-yu said stammeringly. "Could it be that your grandfather also only had your father as a single child?" Ling Han asked deliberately. "I still have an aunt." Light flashed through Ling Han's eyes, and he continued to ask, "Then does your aunt not have any children?" My aunt committed a huge crime, and has been imprisoned by my grandfather at." Yu Kai-yu shook his head, as if he was remembering and struggling at the same time. "Imprisoned where?" Ling Han asked as he filled another cup of wine for Yu Kai-yu. After he had drank a few cups, Yu Kai-yu was grinning dizzily, and said to Ling Han, "Junior brother Ling, what cultivation technique have you practiced? Why is it that I suddenly see 3, and then suddenly, there's 2 of you? Ha ha ha, why have you gone back to becoming only one of you?" Ling Han sighed. He couldn't feel offended by a drunk man. He used a sliver of his divine sense of the heaven tier and asked sternly, "Where is your aunt now?" Yu Kai-yu instantly stiffened, his body frozen. Confusion appeared in his eyes as he said, "My aunt is currently imprisoned at." Pang! It was right at this moment that a loud bang was heard, and the main doors were heavily kicked open. A slender young girl strode in. "Where is Han Ling? Get out here." With such a commotion, Yu Kai-yu had mostly sobered from his drunken state in an instant. His eyes swept over the intruder and he could not help but frown. He asked, "Ao Tai, what are you doing here? Another with the surname Ao?" Most probably, this was one of Ao Feng's daughters. Ling Han, too, turned to look at the young girl. She looked to be in her early 20s and looked very beautiful, not the slightest bit inferior to Lu Yutong and Li Si Chan. However, the arrogance in her expression made her seem as if she could fly at any moment. Such a woman, no matter how beautiful she was, Ling Han could not be moved by her beauty, what more when she was the daughter of his foe. However, Aoz Tai's cultivation was actually already in the spiritual ocean tier, and considering her age, this was very surprising. She had beauty and a high talent in martial arts, so no wonder she was overwhelmingly arrogant. Yu, so he's Hanling? Aoz Tai did not look the slightest bit guilty for barging in by force. Instead, her tone was extremely overbearing as she pointed a finger at Ling Han. He is indeed junior brother Han. However, what do you mean by entering without an invitation? Yu asked darkly, flames of anger burning in his expression. No matter who it was that had his home forcibly trespassed by someone else, he would naturally be angry. What do I mean? Aoz Tai humphed and said, this guy injured a few of my brothers, I want him to kneel in front of them in apology. Nonsense. Yu slammed a hand heavily onto the table and rebuked, junior brother Han had defeated those brothers of yours in a fair battle, and this is something that is publicly known. Yet you come and make trouble here, this will only discredit the reputation of the AO family. I don't care. Aoz Tai shook her head, her expression furious. I only know that this man has injured my 6 brothers and caused them to be humiliated. I want him to crawl all the way to the quarters of my 7 brothers and kowtow sufficiently in front of their doors to beg for the forgiveness of my 7 brothers. Yu was angry and also wanted to laugh at the same time. He said, are you a kid that has yet to grow up to actually say such childish words? Go back quickly and don't make others laugh at you or increase your own humiliation. Yu, are you going to help me or not? Aoz Tai asked coldly. Heng, I have no intention to accompany you in your willfulness. Yu refused decisively. Aoz Tai once again turned to look at Ling Han and said, Han, I'll give you one last chance. Immediately crawl over and kowtow in front of my 7 brothers in apology. Does the AO clan keep producing these women that have problems with their brains? Ling Han asked Yu. You dare to insult me? Aoz Tai was stunned. This outrageously bold criminal was really too despicable. Brother Han, it's best not to offend her. Yu neared Ling Han, and said in a low voice, she is attendant AO Feng's most beloved daughter, and she herself is very beautiful with very high talent in martial arts. As a result, there is a large number of young people in our sect that admires her. In other words, once you offend her, that would be equivalent to offending a majority of the younger members of the sect, and that would be a scenario where your enemies would be everywhere. No wonder she was so arrogant and behaved even more egotistically than the 7 sons of AO family. Ling Han smiled calmly and said, get out of here now. Otherwise, I won't just insult you, I will smack your face as well. You should remember clearly the looks of those brothers of yours, so it couldn't possibly be that you want to share the same appearance that they have, right? Don't the 2 of you regret this? Aoz Tai said coldly. Then, she reached out and ripped her own clothing. With a few tears, there had already appeared a few holes in her sleeves and her pants, and her fair skin could clearly be seen. She ruffled her hair, then screamed out suddenly, molest. Molest. An elite of spiritual ocean tier was already very much stronger than an ordinary person, and though the voice of one could not be described as thunderous, it was not that far from that level either. Instantly, her voice had spread throughout the whole peak, and even people on some of the nearer peaks heard her. Yu instantly understood what trick she was playing, and could not help but wear a darkened expression, looking extremely furious. Chapter 349, False Accusation. Within mere moments, a considerable number of people raced over, and all surged forth into the courtyard. Junior sister Z Tai, are you all right? Who molested you? Tell me, I will tear him apart. To dare to have intentions even on junior sister Z Tai, he's really tired of living. They exclaimed one by one. Those that were qualified to live on this peak were at least in the spiritual ocean tier, and there were even some disciples in their 30s and 40s who had already broken through to the spiritual pedestal tier. Among them, there were some that could possibly break through to the flower blossom tier, or even the spiritual infant tier. Aoz Tai was indeed very popular. Just one shout from her, and so many people had immediately raced over. Some of them had even been in seclusion yet still ran over without a care. Beautiful women were a limited resource in the first place, and there were even fewer beauties that had considerable cultivation levels, what more when Aoz Tai was unusually beautiful. Aoz Tai was indeed an excellent actress. Her previous arrogant, cold, and merciless expression was completely withdrawn from her face. She had fallen and sat on the ground, with tears coating her face, and sobbed. They wanted to molest me, and force me. Woo, 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 I don't want to live anymore. Hong, instantly, everyone's rage was ignited, and they all glared furiously at Ling Han and Yu Kaiyu, looking like they wanted nothing more than to swallow the both of them whole and skin them alive. However, there were still some that had not lost their senses, bewitched by Aoz Tai. Someone asked, "That's not really possible, is it? In this kind of place?" This was a place under the close supervision of the Winter Moon sect, and any bit of disturbance sensed would immediately attract the attention of the elites of the sect. What's so impossible about it? Or are you doubtful of junior sister Z Tai's words and her charm? However, these doubts were immediately drowned out. Perhaps these two had the same thoughts, and that's why they were so outrageously bold to dare use brute force here. Kill them. Quite a number had eyes red with anger. Cough. Yu Kaiyu stood up and said, "Senior and junior brothers, you all are being too arbitrary. Just because of one word from her, you do not care about what the truth is?" Hee, others may not dare, but if it was senior brother Yu, someone said. When the others heard this, they nodded respectively. Yu Kaiyu was the great-grandson of Grand Elder Yu, and if he had indeed molested Aoz Tai, then as long as the elder patriarch of the Yu clan was willing to make a bit of compromise, it was not an impossible thing for Yu Kaiyu to marry Aoz Tai in recompense. When they thought this, a considerable number felt a layer of cold sweat accumulate on their bodies. Thank goodness they managed to get here in time. Now, the majority had already lost their senses due to their overwhelming anger, and even if there were some who were still rational, they were in the minority. "Apprehend the two of them and deal with them according to the rules of our sect," they exclaimed, and one after another, they leaped out to take action. "We can spare you Kaiyu, but Han Lin must be executed. What kind of wretched thing he is to dare to actually molest junior sister Aoz Tai? That's right, kill him." They were all extremely furious. Yu Kaiyu was a member of the Yu clan and no one dared to kill him, but Ling Han was a different story. He was just a newbie that had just recently been taken into the sect, and even if he was killed, it was not advisable to offend the masses. How would the sect actually afford to punish all of them just for the sake of one single person? Aoz Tai had naturally foreseen that would be the case, and that was why she had used such an underhanded scheme. Ling Han shook his head. Against young men like them, beauty was indeed a powerful weapon. A tiny trick like that was enough to turn these so-called geniuses into rash, hot-blooded fools. Really, even if they were sold off, they'd be counting money for the person who had sold them off. In truth, it was hard to blame them for it. These people had always admired Aoz Tai, and all of a sudden, they heard that their goddess had almost been defiled and raped. They were naturally outraged. In the midst of rage, it was of course natural for them to lose the common sense that they should have. He humphed lightly and exclaimed, "A bunch of idiots." He had instilled a sliver of intent of a heaven-tier elite in this exclamation. There was not much force behind it, but it was enough to enter directly into the minds of every single one of them. Instantly, they all looked dazed, and calmed down from their fury. There seemed to be something off with this. Even if Yu Kaiyu intended to rape Aoz Tai, he should not have dragged Ling Han in as well. Ling Han beckoned Yu Kaiyu over and signaled the latter to cooperate with him. Then, he said, "Take a look at the clothing on this woman." With a chilla, he began to tear at Yu Kaiyu's clothes, which gave the latter a scare. If they had been torn by another, they should look like this. Ling Han raised Yu Kaiyu's arm. But that woman's clothing, hee. He paused a while, and continued, Senior brother Yu, tear your own sleeve. Yu Kaiyu finally understood what Ling Han wanted to do, and quickly nodded. With another chilla, he tore open his other sleeve, and indeed, because the angle at which he exerted force was different, the resulting tear looked completely different. Schwa, everyone's eyes instantly turned to stare at Aoz Tai. They were all at least in the spiritual ocean tier, so how could they be idiots? Just now, they had only been fooled because of Aoz Tai's beauty, and had their reason overridden by anger, but with Ling Han's reminder, they had all calmed down and begun to consider the matter seriously. Attempted rape was, in the first place, an illogical thing, because this was Yu Kaiyu's personal courtyard, so why had Aoz Tai appeared here? On the other hand, if it was Aoz Tai who was trying to frame them, everything would become logical. Don't you all trust them? For the sake of escaping punishment, they would of course make a false countercharge. Among the masses, someone immediately called out, making a few of them regain their looks of rage and return to glare at Ling Han and Yu Kaiyu. Ling Han strode out, his eyes sweeping over the crowds, and said, to hide the head and show the tail, do you think I don't know that you're hiding there? He directly acted, and peng, there were a few that attempted to stop him, but Ling Han forced them away with a palm strike each. He instantly grabbed onto a man and asked Yu Kaiyu, Senior brother Yu, do you recognize this person? He should be one of Attendant Ao's sons, but as for his name, hee. Yu Kaiyu said after a moment of consideration. Ao Feng really had too many illegitimate children. With a toss, Ling Han threw the man onto the ground and said, everyone should know by now that these two belong to the Ao clan. They are merely putting on the trick of covering for one by the other shouting with the crowd. It was very obvious that this guy was there to fan the flames. Silence fell upon the crowd. They were not fools, after all. Aoz Tai could make use of their admiration for her, but ultimately, she could not continue to deceive them forever. Aoz Tai screamed shrilly, don't listen to their nonsense. They almost molested me, and are still trying to slander my name. They have gone too far. Ling Han humphed and once again walked towards Aoz Tai. His slender figure created a long shadow on the ground, which shrouded Aoz Tai. You, what are you doing? She asked in a trembling voice. You framed myself and senior brother Ao, so should you not receive some punishment? Ling Han asked coldly and stretched out a hand to subdue Aoz Tai. Stop. Instantly, there was a considerable number of people who acted simultaneously, attacking Ling Han at the same time. It was one thing for Aoz Tai to make use of their feelings, but even if they knew that they had been deceived, how could they simply let go of their feelings of admiration just like that? They naturally could not simply stand by and watch as Ling Han made a move against Aoz Tai. Those who attempt to stop me should pray for luck. Ling Han said coldly, his battle prowess on full power. Peng. 6 flashes of fist chi danced unhindered. Silvery images of dragons surged forth, and those who stood in his way were completely unable to stand against their might. They were all flung away with a punch from him, and it was as if stalks of straw were flying around in the air. Aoz Tai was astonished, and she could no longer pretend to sob piteously on the ground. She hurriedly leaped up, intending to make her escape by ducking into the crowd. There were over 100 spiritual ocean tier martial artists here, and she did not believe Ling Han could defeat all of them in one go. Your limbs are quite swift. Ling Han smirked coldly. He used the shadow wind motion and instantly appeared behind Aoz Tai. With a hook of his right arm, this woman fell into his grasp. Chapter 350, Killed with a Single Slash. Who is this guy? How could he have such dominating power? One punch was enough to fling 7 martial artists of the spiritual ocean tier away, and furthermore, senior brother Lu is someone in the 6th layer of the spiritual ocean tier. Hiss, when did such a freak appear in our sect? Hee, you guys don't know, do you? He is one of the newly accepted disciples this year. Moreover, he has just entered into our sect the day before, and today, he has gained the first place position in the entrance trials. What? With the 7 sons of Ao family participating, he still managed to get the first place? What kind of news did you guys get? The 7 sons of Ao family, as well as senior brother Yu, have all been defeated by him. I seem to get it now. No wonder Ao Z Tai had put on such an act. There were no idiots here, and as long as they could keep their calm, they could very easily understand the ins and outs of the whole story. Han Lin, release junior sister Z Tai first, we can discuss things calmly. Someone asked Ling Han for mercy. Ling Han smiled calmly, and said, when you all burst in just now, you all looked very fierce, as if you wanted to beat me to death at any moment. I'm really very scared. Everyone was struck speechless. You are so ferocious that you have even defeated all the 7 sons of Ao family, so who amongst the people gathered here would be able to threaten you? But as Ao Z Tai was still in his grasp, he could naturally say whatever he liked. Junior brother Han, I know that there is displeasure in your heart, but junior sister Z Tai is attendant Ao's beloved daughter, and is also the great-granddaughter of Grand Elder Ao, someone reminded. Ling Han laughed lightly, and said, senior brother Yu is also Yuzhen Shan, attendant Yu's son, as well as Grand Elder Yu's great-grandson, but this ugly woman had still set him up without the slightest bit of hesitation. Since she has not given any face to him, senior brother Yu naturally need not give her any face either. Yu Kai-yu suddenly gaped. Why was he so suddenly dragged into this issue? But when he thought about it for a moment, he did not say anything to refute Ling Han's words. Ao Z Tai's actions had made him extremely displeased, and he had the intention to make her suffer a bit. If he really tolerated this without making any attempt at payback, then wouldn't that mean that the Yu clan was beneath the Ao clan? Thus, this was not a matter that could be settled with him simply saying that he would let things go, because this affected the competition between 2 different factions. Junior brother Han, you are indeed unusually strong, and there may be no one capable of standing against you in the spiritual ocean tier, but there are so many of us here now, so we are at the advantage in terms of numbers. Why don't you first release junior sister Z Tai? The sect will naturally serve out justice for yourself and senior brother Yu, another said. Ling Han laughed, but turned to look at Yu Kai-yu and said, senior brother Yu, if the accusation that we attempted molest and rape was made solid, what would happen to us? There are 3 taboos in martial arts: defying one's parents, betraying one's master, and committing a sexual offense. Our Winter Moon sect has always strictly observed these 3 taboos, so if the accusation of rape was really made solid, the punishment would be execution. Yu Kai-yu said after some consideration. Ling Han's eyes turned cold, and said, I am actually someone nice. If you respect me, I will respect you as well. But I also remember my grudges very well. Whoever treats me badly, I will definitely avenge myself. Since you want me to die, then why should I allow you to live? These words were directed at Ao Z Tai. Ao Z Tai could not help but quiver, and said, could it be that you actually dare to kill me? Junior brother Han, don't be rash. That, after all, is merely conjecture, Yu Kai-yu hurriedly said. Pooh. Yet Ling Han snatched away someone else's sword, and with a light scrape, blood gushed forth and Ao Z Tai's throat was already slashed open. She stared at Ling Han in disbelief, one hand holding onto her throat, yet she was not able to stop the onsurge of blood at all. She had died just like that? She had merely come to stand up for her brothers, and planned to use her influence among the younger generation to forcibly remake Ling Han into a despicable character who would molest women, and by that time, public clamor would be able to obscure the actual truth. How would Ling Han be able to continue to stay in the Winter Moon sect? He would definitely have his cultivation crippled and be forced out of the sect. Even if events had exceeded her expectations in the later half, she was not the slightest bit anxious. Anyways, if one plan did not work, there was always another. But she had never thought that Ling Han would be such a decisive character had actually killed her with a single slash. She was of the Ao clan. Why had Ling Han dared to do something like that? She would never know the reason. As the last signs of life left her body, she fell onto the ground with a pang, and her beautiful face, just like that, was stuck onto the dirt. Hiss, continuous sharp breaths were heard from all around. Then, a considerable number turned to stare at Ling Han with red eyes. Want to fight? I am willing, Ling Han said calmly. He was especially angry, because he had just about managed to get some information about his mother, but was forcefully interrupted by Ao Tai. Furthermore, his mother was currently imprisoned, and the cause for it was because the Ao clan was involved. Now that Ao Tai was also planning to set him up, his killing intent was naturally overflowing. He entered the Winter Moon sect indeed to find out his mother's location, and indeed because he wanted to obtain the Thunder Battle Armor, but this did not imply he was willing to submit to humiliation. He was someone who had been in the Heaven Tier and the Alchemy Emperor in his last life. How could his backbone be soft? In the worst-case scenario, he could give up on the Thunder Battle Armor. Moreover, as long as he was able to become more powerful, how could he not be capable of crushing the Winter Moon sect and rescuing his mother? It was only that this plan would take longer, and he wanted to rescue his mother as soon as possible. Han Lin, at least a few dozen people roared in anger, eyes red, their killing intent sky high. No matter what fault Ao Tai had done, she did not deserve death. Now that their goddess had passed away, this made them extraordinarily outraged, and they were determined to crush Ling Han into dust. It was only now that Yu Kai-yu came back from his shocked state, and he could not help but wipe away the cold sweat that had gathered on his forehead. This guy was really a little ancestor. He had actually killed Ao Tai just like that. What could be done now? The Ao clan would definitely not let things go like that. But after only an instant, he made the decision to shield Ling Han with all his effort. The Yu clan and the Ao clan had been on fair terms 20 years ago, and had even advanced to the level that they wanted to ally their clans through marriage, but after Yu Hongchang's matter had happened, the relations between the two clans swiftly deteriorated. Currently, the two clans would oppose each other in all aspects and compete in everything, and the Yu clan was now obviously at disadvantage. If they were comparing the older generation, Ao Feng dominated over Yu Shan, and in the younger generation, those 7 sons of Ao family were all stronger than Yu Kai-yu, and the gap between the two clans was not small in any way. It was all thanks to the fact that their elders were at a tie, and the deciding factor was the ability of the spiritual infant tier. Thus, even if the younger generations of the Yu clan were not as strong, they were still able to stand on equal footing with the Ao clan at least. This was true now, while the elder of the Yu clan was still alive. But the problem was, if the Yu clan continued to wither in this manner, or if the younger generation of the Ao clan completely developed, then the Yu clan would definitely lose in the competition between the two clans. The Yu clan had really put in enough effort. For example, Yu Kai-yu had obviously obtained more cultivation resources than the 7 sons of Ao family, but why was his cultivation still at the 8th layer of the spiritual ocean tier? That was because he had continued to suppress it and did not make any attempt to break through yet, intending to solidify his foundation and trying his best to perfect his cultivation at the level of the spiritual ocean tier. Yu Kai-yu's talent was not too bad, but he was not so talented as to defy logic. Furthermore, he alone was standing against 7 opponents, so his chance of winning was really minuscule. Yet it was at this moment that Ling Han had appeared. His talent defied logic and he had the backing of an alchemist. More importantly, right from the start, he was already on the opposite side of the Ao clan. Thus, Yu Kai-yu wanted to befriend Ling Han. Who knew, perhaps he would become a strong weight on the power balance against the Ao clan in future. Now that Ling Han had killed Ao Tai, on the surface, he had made a life-or-death enmity with the Ao clan, but in truth, wasn't this a chance for the Yu clan? A chance for the Yu clan and Ling Han to become real allies. Chapter 351, Ao Feng appears. What are you planning to do? Yu Kai-yu exclaimed darkly. Since he had made his decision, he displayed the decisiveness that was characteristic of a member of a great clan. He killed junior sister Tai, we will kill him to avenge her, the crowd shouted in fury. Insolence. Yu Kaiyu humphed coldly. Is the sect the kind of place that allows you all to have fights in private? It is naturally up to the sect to judge whether junior brother Han has committed a crime, so how could you all be allowed to make trouble? That's right. This is indeed something to be handled by the sect. A clear voice rang out, and all of a sudden, there was another person in the courtyard, and none of them actually managed to see how he had suddenly appeared. Of course, Ling Han was the exception. Greetings, Attendant AO. When the masses saw the newcomer, they all raised their clasped hands to pay their respects. Ling Han was a little surprised. So this was AO Feng? He turned his eyes to the newcomer, and saw that it was a man who looked to be in his 40s. He was quite tall and slender, his complexion as clear as jade, and looked extremely handsome. Furthermore, he had an elegant bearing, and could very easily make women fall for him. No wonder he could be a stud. His appearance and bearing were both well above average. Moreover, AO Feng was also unusually talented in martial arts and already had 1 foot in the flower blossom tier by now. That was already over a dozen years ahead of the greatly talented and bold Rain Emperor, which was proof enough of his extraordinary ability. Of course, there were talented people in every generation, and among the 7 sons of AO family, at least AO Xing had already exceeded AO Feng when the latter was at his age, and set against the whole north region, Lu Yang, Xue Xian and Zui were even more dominating. AO Feng's eyes paused on AO Z Tai's body for quite a while. He had been a womanizer his whole life, with innumerable illegitimate children, and it was only these few years that he had exercised a bit of restraint. In truth, even he himself could not remember the names of every single one of his children. However, there were a few outstandingly talented children that were precious to him. One example was AO Xing and another was AO Z Tai. A mere disciple who had just recently entered into the sect actually dared to kill his beloved daughter? The more outraged AO Feng was, the calmer his expression became. He said calmly, "It is a great breach of rules for a battle to commence in private within the sect. However, as an attendant, I probably have the right to handle this matter, don't I? Isn't that right, nephew Kaiyu?" The aura of the spiritual pedestal tier surged forth, and Yu Kaiyu erupted in an uncontrollable cold sweat. AO Feng already had 1 foot in the flower blossom tier and possessed a sliver of an immortal's aura. This made Yu Kaiyu feel as if there was a mountain weighing down on him. Even standing up was an exercise of willpower and force for him, but his legs were already uncontrollably shaking. How could he even speak now? However, it was at this moment that Ling Han stepped out and stood in front of Yu Kaiyu, taking this kind of tremendous pressure onto his own shoulders. Yu Kaiyu instantly felt lightened. He could not help but feel both thankful and worried, because no matter how much of a monster Ling Han was, he was also in the first layer of the spiritual ocean tier just like himself, so it was practically an impossibility for him to be able to take on the aura exuded from someone who was half a step away from the flower blossom tier. Yet Ling Han appeared extremely calm. AO Feng wanted to use his aura to suppress him, someone who had once been in the heaven tier? He had better try it again when he had reached the level of someone like Sword Emperor or Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. He smiled calmly, and asked, "What does Attendant AO plan to do to me?" Hiss. The crowd inhaled sharply at this and could not help but be secretly impressed by his courage. In front of someone who was half a step away from the flower blossom tier, Ling Han could still be so calm. He had to be exceedingly brave, and this point alone was worth them all giving him a thumbs up. A life for a life, naturally, the punishment is execution, AO Feng said calmly as well. He was half a step away from the flower blossom tier, and possessed absolute authority here. Ling Han suddenly laughed loudly and said, "AO Z Tai plotted and intended to frame and set up both myself and senior brother Yu. I am the champion of the open trials this time round, and with my talent, it would be no issue for me to break through to the spiritual infant tier in future. Senior brother Yu is Grand Elder Yu's great-grandson. Who are we? And how very important are we to the sect? Yet AO Z Tai actually wanted to frame us and accused us as despicable, lewd villains. Such a person, shouldn't she be executed? When everyone heard this, they could not help but twitch as they all shared the same thought. They had seen some who had really thick skin, but they had never seen someone who would praise themselves to the extent that Ling Han had. He actually dared to exaggerate and claim that he would definitely break through to the spiritual infant tier in future. This kind of boast was really mad. However, those who had actually witnessed Ling Han's battles during daytime were nodding in agreement. He, someone who was merely in the first layer of the spiritual ocean tier, could actually defeat all the 7 sons of Ao family. This guy's talent in martial arts could only be described with the word monstrous. Furthermore, he was already in the first layer of the spiritual ocean tier at the mere age of 19, and this kind of achievement could already be counted within the top 100 in the history of the Winter Moon sect. And among these 100 people, there were 56 that managed to break through to the spiritual infant tier in the end, and there were 31 that had also reached the 9th layer of the flower blossom tier. As for the remaining 13, it was either that they had vanished amongst the crowd, or died at a young age. Otherwise, they would have at least broken through to the flower blossom tier. History had already proved that Ling Han indeed had that kind of potential, and was not merely boasting. Ao Feng was stunned. He had never imagined that Ling Han would actually still be able to speak so much with such a sure tone when he was under the pressure of his aura. However, he was not angered, because he possessed absolute power. What need was there for him to get angry when he had such power? I don't care, I only know that you've killed my daughter. No one can kill anyone from the Ao clan, no one. He moved, and hung, a sharp brightness arose from behind him. His martial intent was at full power, forming what seemed to be a world of its own. It was within this short instant that multiple thoughts streaked through Ling Han's mind. Should he have the Black Tower instill power into him, or draw out the demon birth sword, and kill this enemy directly? Or he could duck into the Black Tower and temporarily avoid confronting him directly, because he very much wanted to leave Ao Feng to Ling Dongxing himself to deal with. However, before he had come to a decision, he saw a huge crimson palm strike forth and parry Ao Feng's attack. Humph, the Winter Moon sect is not your private kingdom where you can do as you like. Hong, a violent power surged forth, forming a brilliant light. When the light had died out, another man had stood in front of Ling Han. He looked to be in his 40s as well, with a sturdy hair and his black hair fluttering around him. He withdrew his fist, folded his arms behind him, and said, I think that the fault lies with Si Tai. As for Han Lin, he can only be claimed to be a bit too rash, so it would be enough for him to get a little black mark. Dad! Yu Kai Yu immediately exclaimed in delight and surprise. What made him even happier was the fact that his father had obviously made the same decision as he had, that was to shield Ling Han to the best of their ability. Greetings, Attendant Yu. Everyone once again greeted. The person that had come this time was, of course, Xue Xian. Ao Feng looked at Xue Xian coldly, and asked, Then my daughter has died for nothing? Ho ho, senior brother Ao, you have my condolences. Xue Xian said without any sincerity in his words. Although niece Si Tai has gone too far, but we should honor the dead. Thus, there is no longer any need to pursue her fault in this matter. Ao Feng was so angry that he looked like he wanted to breathe fire. Then, he said coldly, Today, if this boy does not die, I will definitely not let matters go. You have so many sons and daughters anyway, so it's not such a big issue if a few of them die, Xue Xian mumbled. What? Ao Feng instantly jumped up and raised a palm in a strike at Xue Xian, which attack transformed into 8 eerily sharp blades. He was a swordsman, so even if he did not have a sword in his hands, every move he made was filled with sword intent. When they heard Xue Xian's words, quite many felt some sympathy for Ao Feng, and secretly thought that it was rumored that Xue Xian was a brainless and straightforward character. The rumors were indeed true. How could he say such words in front of everyone? Chapter 352, Punishment Decided. Xue Xian raised a palm to parry the strike and created 7 flashes of qi that transformed into 7 giant crimson palms that flew forth towards those 8 flashes of sword qi. Pu, 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 pu. The sword chi and the gigantic palms cancelled each other out. However, as Ao Feng had formed his 8th flash of sword chi, he was at an obvious advantage. The additional flash of sword chi continued its advance, forcing Xue Xian to dodge it. This was an advantage born from a deeper comprehension of Dao. They had shot out their attacks which had the same amount of force behind them at the same time, yet the one who had a stronger comprehension would still have a more powerful attack. This was still only the gap when it was a clash between 7 flashes and 8 flashes of chi. If it was a clash of 1 flash against 8 flashes, or even 0 against 8 flashes of chi, then the power gap would be as huge and overwhelming as the gap between heaven and earth. That was why those who managed to form 7 flashes of chi could be labeled as rulers. Thankfully, the gap between 7 and 8 flashes of chi was not especially obvious, and Xue Xian was not too far beneath Ao Feng in cultivation. As a result, though he would still be at a disadvantage against Ao Feng, he was still able to contend with the latter for quite a while. This was the Winter Moon sect, and if there really erupted a fierce battle between them, then one of the higher ranks would definitely appear to stop them. Xue Xian, are you sure you want to be my enemy? Ao Feng suddenly jumped up in fury. I am currently extremely angry. One of my daughters died, and I want to kill this bastard. Xue Xian shook his head and said, I haven't sparred with you for quite a long time, so I would like to see how far you've advanced now and whether you've degraded or not. Ao Feng withdrew his furious expression, took a deep breath, and said, You have never been able to rival me. That was the case in the past, now, and in future, it will still be so. He widened his eyes, and there actually appeared 2 flashes of cold light that streaked out and tore through the open air as if they were real blades, creating power ripples. Xue Xian did not dare to be careless. Ao Feng was indeed superior to him in power, and though this gap was not very large, if the former really put all his effort into a battle and he still proceeded carelessly, then there would be a great possibility that he would be defeated within a few moves. Come on then, he said without a care. When elites battled, they would naturally contend with their real battle prowess, but one should not underestimate the power of words. This was a kind of stance, so it could not be weak. Hung. It was at this moment that a powerful pressure pressed down on the area. An elder arrived by stepping on air. As his eyes swept over the group, his imposing gaze made both Ao Feng and Xue Xian instantly cease their battle. This was an elite of the flower blossom tier, and as his immortal aura swept over all of them, it made every single one of them feel utter reverence as if they were facing a god. Ling Han glanced over. This elite of the flower blossom tier was exactly He Jingchu, who had gone to Rain Country some time ago and fought a battle with the Rain Emperor, but in the end was chased out. And though they were both half a step away from the flower blossom tier, the Rain Emperor was much more forceful than Ao Feng. There was no way to compare the two. One was only the attendant of a great sect, and no matter how much power he had and how many disciples he had authority over, ultimately, he could not compare to one who was the emperor of a whole country. Furthermore, the Rain Emperor was the kind of dominating ruler that appeared once in a few thousand years, and he had made full use of the power of the nation to its extreme. He could not help but wonder how the Rain Emperor was now. With the latter's intelligence and outstanding courage, he should be close to breaking through to the flower blossom tier, shouldn't he? Once he had broken through to the flower blossom tier, he would be able to add an additional 200 years to his lifespan. The Rain Emperor was only 60 years old now, and in terms of a lifespan of about 300 years, that was equivalent to about 20 years old of an ordinary lifespan, so he was in the prime of his youth. Perhaps it would not take a long time for him to hear rumors of a young elite gradually appearing, rushing through the north region, or even entering the other 3 regions and prefecture, displaying his elegant bearing and powerful presence as much as he desired. In this matter, the sect leader has already made a decision. He Jingchu said emotionlessly, it was Aoz Tai who had used a scheme to set up one of our disciples first, and now that she has been killed by Han Lin, she deserved it for her crime. However, Han Lin killed her in private, which is also a breach of the rules of the sect, so his punishment is to enter the Dark Devil Forest and collect 7 stalks of fiery sun grass in 1 year's time before he will be allowed to return. That was the end of the matter? Everyone was shocked. That was a daughter of the Ao clan, and furthermore, she was not an insignificant illegitimate child, but a genius and talented princess. Yet Han Lin was only to go to the Dark Devil Forest and collect herbs. Wasn't this punishment a little too light? However, there were some who were wearing cold smirks. That was the fiery sun grass they were talking about here. It could only be found in the deepest parts of the Dark Devil Forest, and there would be demonic beasts of the flower blossom tier there. Even an elite of the spiritual pedestal tier would not dare to carelessly enter that part of the forest. Moreover, the fiery sun grass was an extremely rare herb. Collecting 1 stalk would take a very long time, and if one wanted to collect 7 stalks, the time needed would be overwhelming. If one was lucky, that would take about 1 or 2 months. But if one was unlucky, then he'd best prepare himself to stay there for about 1.5 years. During this long period of time, how high were his chances to encounter a demonic beast in the flower blossom tier? Thus, while this was not a definite death sentence, it was still extremely dangerous. It was obvious. There was no way that a member of the younger generation of the Ao clan could die for nothing, but in this matter, it was still Ao Z Tai who was in the wrong. Furthermore, this involved Yu Kai Yu as well. Thus, the elder of the Ao clan must have interfered, which had led to this kind of punishment in the end. Junior brother Han, I shall go with you. Yu Kai Yu immediately declared, extremely loyal. He did indeed have this kind of character, and added with the fact that they had experienced a hardship together just now, he made the choice to go with Ling Han without any hesitation. Ling Han nodded to Yu Kai Yu, yet wondered internally whether he should really enter the Dark Devil Forest. After all, he was only holding on to the false identity of Han Lin, so there was no need for him to take the risk just to maintain this false cover. He decided not to worry about that for the moment and see how things went. Anyways, he had nothing much to occupy his time currently. Ao Feng humphed and stared for a very long time at Ling Han's face before he finally turned and left. There was nothing else he could do now. The elder of the Ao clan had obviously agreed to this final decision, and no matter how arrogant he was, he dared not oppose a decision made by their clan elder. The Dark Devil Forest? At most within 3 months, he would definitely be able to break through to the flower blossom tier, and by that time, he would be able to charge into the deeper parts of Dark Devil Forest, find Ling Han, and kill him. It was only another 2 or 3 months. He did not believe in the slightest that Ling Han would be able to procure 7 stalks of fiery sun grass in such a short period of time. The crowd dispersed and went their separate ways. There was naturally someone who carried away Ao Z Tai's body. Moreover, the passing of this goddess of the winter moon sect had broken the hearts of who knew how many young men, so everyone wanted to have a moment of silence. Han Lin, within 3 days, you must leave the winter moon sect. If you dare to escape secretly, the sect will definitely search the whole world and apprehend you, Zheng Chu said, without knowing that the person in front of him was precisely that criminal that he had gone over to the Rain country to apprehend some time ago. When he had finished speaking, he immediately turned around and left. With his identity as one in the flower blossom tier, he of course disdained spending pointlessly time on talking with a minor character like Ling Han. Junior brother Han, we're in trouble this time. Yu Kai Yu said, his brow wrinkled in a frown. He naturally knew the difficulty of collecting 7 stalks of fiery sun grass. Ling Han frowned as well, and just when Yu Kai Yu thought that he too was troubled, he heard Ling Han say, who knows if I would still be able to get the thunder battle armor tomorrow? Yu Kai Yu almost stumbled. Things were already like this, and you are actually still talking about the thunder battle armor? He said in irritation, compared with entering the Dark Devil Forest to collect herbs, the thunder battle armor is nothing. Ling Han smiled and said, with the thunder battle armor, wouldn't it be safer for us? That sounded very reasonable. Yu Kai Yu scratched his head, kept feeling like there was something off with that logic. Chapter 353, Cripple. On the second day, Ling Han indeed still obtained the Thunder Battle Armor, which made him extremely pleased. Firstly, the Thunder Battle Armor was indeed a very valuable treasured tool, and years ago, Xue Xian had worn it all day, treating it like it was a priceless treasure. Secondly, it was precisely because this was a spirit tool one of his old acquaintances had used before Ling Han felt very nostalgic. He was reborn after 10,000 years, and all around him, the people he met were all strangers to him. Thus, when he saw an old possession of someone whom he had known years ago, how could he not be overwhelmed by emotions? Then he'd just go to the Dark Devil Forest. Ling Han had made his decision. The reason why he had come to the Winter Moon sect was to find out where his mother was, bring trouble to the Ao clan, and in passing, steal some good stuff. These three motives were practically fulfilled. He had collected a considerable number of spiritual herbs, and had even obtained the Thunder Battle Armor. He had defeated all the 7 sons of Ao family and killed Ao Ztai. Lastly, since Yu was going with him, then he would naturally have a lot of time to probe for information. This cousin and his uncle had more or less the same personality. They were very forthright and straightforward people, and weren't really ones to keep secrets. Thus, after he obtained the Thunder Battle Armor, Ling Han decided to set out. Yu went with him, and looked to be in high spirits at that. It seemed that this guy had only left the sect for a trial twice, and even during these 2 times, he had not gone too far. Thus, he had never really left on a long journey away from the sect. Ling Han sighed. This guy said he wanted to help him, but the best he could hope for was that he wouldn't hold him back. He and Yu set out together and descended the mountain. Ling Han. However, they had just arrived at the foot of the mountain when they suddenly heard a voice filled with venom ring out behind them. This voice was Feng. Ling Han did not turn around. He was now Han Lin, and not Ling Han. You actually still dare to come here, die? Feng roared furiously, drawing his saber and delivered a strike at Ling Han. Shio. There actually appeared 6 flashes of saber chi that transformed into 6 cold bright sharp blades that charged towards Ling Han. This guy had improved very fast. At that time in the Rain Country, he had only formed 4 flashes of saber chi, but now, he had shockingly reached the level of 6 flashes. Looks like after Ling Han crippled one of his legs, he had received a huge provocation, which boosted his comprehension in his saber arts. Shua, cold chi spread throughout the air, and the severe, fierce saber chi streaked through the air, making for a very terrifying spectacle. Are you crazy? Because he was standing together with Ling Han, Yu was naturally in the vicinity of this attack as well. Furthermore, the name that Feng had called out was incomprehensible. He naturally would not think that it had any relation to Ling Han, and only thought that they had encountered a maniac, so he immediately delivered his own punch. His arms immediately transformed and looked like they were made of black iron. Martial intent transformed into patterns that shone on his arms, and 6 flashes of fist chi shot forth. Pung! The fist parried the saber's blade and the fist chi clashed with the saber chi, cancelling each other out. Feng Yan's gaze tensed. He said, "Who are you, and why are you defending this person?" Yu glanced over and could not help but be astonished, because even though this person was a cripple who had obviously lost one of his legs, he now had a prosthetic attached, and his pants leg revealed a bit of a white-colored metal, which had a circular shape and stood on the ground. His eyes swept over the symbol on Feng Yan's sleeve, and he could not help but be even more astonished as he mumbled, "When has our Winter Moon sect started to take in cripples? Furthermore, this cripple looks really powerful." He was straightforward in his speech, and when he said this cripple, he was only saying things as they were, so in truth, he did not have any intention to insult him. However, when Feng heard this cripple sounded as if it was filled with malice. "You are seeking death." Feng Yan's eyes sharpened, and he was just about to deliver another attack. Ling Han turned around and said, "Do you have some kind of problem? You plan to jump into a battle right from the moment you see us. Do you have no recognition for the rules of the sect?" Feng Yan paused. When he saw Ling Han's back, it was 100% like his great enemy's, but why was there such a huge difference the moment he turned around? This youth, or rather young man, did not have an outstanding appearance, and there was a great difference between his face and Ling Han's. But why did his voice give him such a familiar feeling, and his back looked so much like Ling Han's? Furthermore, this expression, the tone that he used to speak, was filled with the feeling that he detested. I was mistaken. Multiple thoughts streaked through his head, yet in the end, he only said this. Crazy. Yu Kai-yu glared angrily at him. He was the eldest grandson of the Yu clan, yet for some unfathomable reason, he was attacked, which made him very displeased. But when he recalled the mission that he and Ling Han had, he did not currently have the time to call Feng Yan to accounts, so he said, I have something to do now, and I will deal with you when I come back. As he spoke, he tugged Ling Han and planned to leave. When he saw Ling Han's back, killing intent once again appeared on Feng Yan's face. He turned and looked at a disciple who was standing at the roadside and asked, Who are these two? Who are you, and why should I tell you? That disciple asked with his head held high, very displeased with Feng Yan's attitude. Feng Yan's eyes sharpened and a terrifying aura exuded from him, which immediately made that disciple shiver in fear. He hurriedly answered, The slightly older one is Yu Kai-yu, senior brother Yu. He is Grand Elder Yu's great-grandson, and the other one is called Han Lin. He has just entered the sect 2 days ago, but he is the kind to attract trouble. He has just arrived, and has already killed attendant Ao's beloved daughter, and now has been punished to enter the Dark Devil Forest to collect fiery sun grass. Feng Yan's right index finger suddenly flicked, and his killing intent spread. Han Lin, Ling Han, wasn't that precisely the other way round? Furthermore, he was a newly entered disciple, yet was so outrageously bold that he dared to kill the daughter of an attendant. This was very similar to Ling Han's personality. He immediately leaped up and left, heading towards the White Cloud Peak. This was where all the higher ranks of the Winter Moon sect lived. If one wanted to enter here, one at least had to be in the spiritual pedestal tier, or be the personal disciple of an elite of the spiritual infant tier or the flower blossom tier. Not even Yu Kai-yu was qualified to live here. Feng Yan found the place where the information for the sect's disciples were recorded, directly drew out the personal token of Grand Elder Xue, and made the request to look at Ling Han's information. Suspicions were still only suspicions, after all. He wanted solid proof. Han Lin, 19 years old. He's from Return Origin Mountain, and was at the first layer of the spiritual ocean tier upon his entry into the sect. As Feng Yan read, a sliver of a cold smirk appeared at his lips, and he said, Send someone to the Return Origin Mountain to verify this person's information. Young Master Yan, isn't that a bit of making a big fuss over a small issue? Do as I say, or do I need to ask my master to speak with you? I wouldn't dare. When Feng Yan left, his expression was dark. Han Lin, if you are really Ling Han, I will definitely have you die in the Winter Moon sect because you have sought your own death. Since you've concealed your identity, when I kill you, I would have only killed a minor character named Han Lin. Hang. Ling Han and Yu Kai-yu set out, and headed towards Sea Breeze City. It was unknown how long they would spend on this trip to the Dark Devil Forest, so naturally, he had to go and get Lu Yutong and the others first. Anyways, Yu Kai-yu did not know anyone of their group. To avoid being targeted by Ao Feng, Xue Xian even escorted them personally, and he only returned to the Winter Moon sect after they had left the boundaries of the Yulong Mountains without spotting any sign of Ao Feng. That was because even if Ao Feng's daughter had died, it was no matter, since he still had a considerable number of children left. But in his case, he only had this one son. The two of them arrived at the Sea Breeze City, an extremely large city. It was a dozen times larger than even the imperial city of the Rain Country. The city walls that were over 100 meters tall cast a long shadow on the ground, and the whole city seemed like a colossal beast crawling. I need to go and find a few friends first, Ling Han said. All right, Yu Kai-yu said without thinking too much about it, not worried that Ling Han could sell him off. Chapter 354, Who's Better at Picking Up Girls? Ling Han soon found the inn that Lu Yutong and the others were staying at. Coincidentally, Lu Yutong and Li Si-chan were coming down from upstairs together right at that moment. They looked like they were planning to have something to eat. It was almost noon, so the time was just right for lunch. Wah, two great beauties. Yu instantly blew a whistle. Ling Han rolled his eyes and said, "They have a silk veil over their faces, and you can still see that they are beauties? Hee, you should trust my eyes. Since I've said that they're beauties, then they're definitely beauties." Yu patted Ling Han's shoulder with a grin and said, "You just wait here, and let Big Brother Yu show you a few tricks to pick up a girl." Ling Han's expression became a little strange, and he asked, "You want to pick the two of them up? One would not be too few, and two would not be too many. Learn a bit, AI, you're so tanned, and though you don't look ugly, you're still too far away from being handsome. Looks like you won't be able to learn Big Brother Yu's wisdom," Yu said, shaking his head. Ling Han laughed, and asked, "Aren't you worried that you would pierce my fragile heart by saying that? As a human being, the most important thing is to face up to reality. You indeed don't look very appealing, and there is too much of a gap between the handsome, dashing looks that your Big Brother Yu has. Forget it, let's not talk about this. You first observe the skill your Big Brother Yu has in picking up girls." Then Yu took big strides towards Lu Yutong and the girls. However, in a short while, he returned gloomily, looking downhearted. "How was it? Were you rebuffed?" Ling Han glanced over and saw that Hunyo was still waving her claws and baring her teeth at Yu, but when Ling Han caught her eye, the little girl couldn't help but tilt her head and look him over. This little girl really had terrifying instincts. After he had changed his appearance, even Lu Yutong and Li Si-chan had not noticed the slightest oddness about him, but Hunyo seemed to have discovered something was strange about him but had yet to confirm her suspicions. "Don't remind me. Let's drink, no one is going home without getting drunk." Yu looked as if he had had his heart broken. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "Why don't I show off a few of my tricks as well and let you see what is really the best trick to pick up a girl?" "Ha, ha." Yu naturally did not believe his words, and laughed sarcastically at him. "If you're able to sit with them, then I'll be convinced. What's so difficult about that?" Ling Han clapped a hand on his shoulder and said, "You go find us a table first, and wait while I go and bring them over." "Pooh." Yu choked in laughter and said, "Junior Brother Han, Junior Brother Han. I am very impressed with your battle prowess, but your ability at making boasts seems to be even more awesome. All right, if you can bring them over, I'll call you Big Brother from now on." "That's what you've said, so you better not regret it," Ling Han said, shaking his head. "Yes, that's what I said. Go on then." Yu looked like he was waving him off in a farewell. Without another word, Ling Han walked towards the table that Lu Yutong and Li Si-chan were seated at, whereas Yu was watching from one side while looking for an empty table to sit at. Naturally, a waiter soon approached and asked for his order. How big could the dining hall in an inn be? With a few steps, Ling Han had arrived in front of the table that Lu Yutong and Li Si-chan were sitting at. "My two misses, may I sit down?" Ling Han asked with a smile. Lu Yutong and Li Si-chan simultaneously looked displeased at this. Even if they had veiled their faces, he could still see their slender brows were wrinkled in a frown. It was not that they had never seen skirt chasers before, but it was the first time they had seen one that was brave enough to directly sit at their table with them. "No," Li Si-chan said coldly. Meanwhile, Lu Yutong directly stretched out a slender, jade finger and pointed in the direction of the main door. Her meaning was obvious, and that was for him to get lost. Yu laughed loudly. He was rebuffed previously, and so naturally did not believe that Ling Han, a guy who did not look in any way outstanding and additionally was so tanned, could succeed. Otherwise, wouldn't that imply that his charms were too inferior and that he could not measure up to even Ling Han? Ling Han was not discouraged. He turned to Hunyo and asked, "Little beauty, may I sit beside you? Hunyo did not say another word and directly moved her behind, eking out space on what had originally been a long bench that could only accommodate one person. Pooh. This time, it was Lu Yutong and Li Si Chan's turn to choke. They had originally thought that even if Hunyo did not explode, she would still ignore this stranger. They had even prepared themselves to restrain Hunyo together so as to ensure that the little girl did not hurt anyone. Yet they had never imagined that the little girl would have this kind of reaction. This, had Hunyo been bewitched? As the two girls looked dumbstruck, Ling Han had already sat down. He knew that Hunyo had already recognized him. He laughed and teased Hunyo. The little girl was very cooperative, and very soon, she squeezed into his arms and acted spoiled. Pa, Yu could not help but drop the chopsticks he was holding and his face twitched uncontrollably. Damn, he had taken everything into account, yet left out a little girl from his calculations. Young beauties indeed would not like Ling Han's type, tanned and with rather ordinary looks, but what would a little girl know about what a handsome man looked like? He never imagined that his junior brother Han was so good with kids. Thankfully, he had only sat at the same table with the two young beauties, but it was practically impossible for him to bring them over. There was no need for him to address Ling Han as big brother. Phew, he almost met with an unexpected failure. Lu Yutong and Li Si Chan were both very baffled. Hunyo extremely rejected the approach of any strangers, and if it was not because for Ling Han, even they would not be able to get close to this little girl. Yet why was it that an unfamiliar man was able to make Hunyo act so defenseless, and act so spoiled and warm as if the man was Ling Han? Could it be? The eyes of the two girls lit up at the same time. They both knew that Ling Han had changed his appearance and went to the Winter Moon sect, so did that mean that this young man in front of them was Ling Han left for so long, and not play with Nyo? It was at this moment that they heard Hunyo say with much displeasure as she bit Ling Han's hand to express her dissatisfaction. Indeed. The two girls finally understood, and secretly felt ashamed as well. They were both very deeply in love with Ling Han, yet they had not recognized their beloved when he was standing in front of them. On the other hand, Hunyo was able to recognize him with a single look. How could they bear with that? Ling Han smiled faintly, tousled Hunyo's hair, and said, "All right, I'll play more often with Nyo in future." Hunyo knew how to act spoiled, but would never throw an unreasonable tantrum. She immediately stopped frowning and gave Ling Han a very sweet smile. Fuck, was this little girl transformed from some kind of vixen? That was really too cunning of her. Like that, Ling Han would definitely feel apologetic and dote even more on this little girl. The two girls exchanged a look and could not help but feel alert in their minds. They definitely could not overlook Hunyo just because she was little, because a little girl would very soon grow up to become a young girl. With Hunyo's possessiveness, by that time, the two of them might not even be able to get within 10 meters of Ling Han. Ling Han nodded at the two girls, and said, "My name now is Han Lin, and that guy over there is my cousin, but he does not know who I am. Come with me." Lu Yutong and Li Si Chan instantly looked shy, but they still stood up and followed Ling Han back to where Yu was sitting. Pa, the chopsticks that Yu had just picked up not too long ago fell back onto the table. His face twitched, and it looked like his eyes were practically popping out of his head. How was this possible? They were really conned over by this guy? No matter how he looked at this junior brother Han, there wasn't any particularly outstanding part to him, was there? Or did the women nowadays prefer the ordinary, tan type? Chapter 355, Information about Mother. Dark Angel _ Ling Han sat down, holding Hunyo in his arms. The little girl was acting spoiled and clinging to him without any intention of coming down from his arms. Meanwhile, Lu Yutong and Li Si Chan sat on either side of him. The four of them coincidentally occupied all four sides of the table. Senior brother Yu, looks like you will have to change how you address me in the future, Ling Han said, laughing. Yu Kaiyu felt like he was about to go crazy. He turned to Li Si-chan and said, has this guy promised you some benefits to make you sit here? Let me tell you, this guy is a liar, he's both poor and ugly. To save his face as a senior brother, he did not care for anything else anymore and began to disparage Ling Han's character. Li Si-chan took off her face veil, and instantly, her delicate features were revealed. It was as if she herself was a deity, pleasing to anyone who saw her. She smiled faintly, and said, would have to disappoint senior brother you. I'm here of my own accord. Lu Yutong was not to be outdone either, and she similarly removed her face veil and said, so am I. The reason why they had worn face veils was simply because they had not wanted to attract unnecessary trouble with their outstanding beauty, but now that Ling Han had returned, there was naturally nothing for them to be afraid of. Yu Kaiyu could not help but gape with his mouth wide open. He had long foreseen that these two girls were great beauties, but still had not expected that they would be beautiful to this level. They were not in the least bit inferior to Aoz Tai in terms of beauty. Thankfully, he was not the kind of man who would be completely unable to move upon seeing a beautiful girl. He very quickly returned to his senses, gave Ling Han a thumbs up, and said, you're awesome. I'm convinced. Hee, don't you continue teasing senior brother you anymore, Lu Yutong said to Ling Han. Yu Kaiyu stared blankly for a moment before he immediately understood, and said, so the two of them are your friends. Ling Han laughed loudly, and said, senior brother you is finally clever for once. I was just thinking how could your charms be so powerful that you're able to abduct two great beauties upon your first meeting, so it appears that you know each other. Yu Kaiyu shook his head repeatedly, but also heaved out a breath of relief. It was not that he was not as charming as Ling Han, but there was another reason for his defeat. Furthermore, since they had known each other early on, then the bet they had made should of course not be taken seriously. Ling Han was also just joking around with Yu Kaiyu. He turned to look at Lu Yutong, and asked, where are Big Brother Guang, Qin and Wujiao? Wujiao and Qin have already eaten, but Big Brother Guang, Li Si-chan paused slightly. He seems to have suffered some kind of blow, and has looked dispirited for quite a few days already. Ling Han nodded and said, I'll go take a look at him later. However, the important thing now is to make senior brother you drunk. Why do you want to make me drunk? Yu Kaiyu asked very innocently. Is it not worth getting drunk for the sake of seeing two such beautiful girls? Ling Han asked with a smile. Hee, then let's get drunk. Yu Kaiyu was an unrestrained person in the first place, and those with straightforward personalities usually tended to like drinking. Thus, he immediately smacked the table, and called out, waiter, get us some good wine. However, his lack of restraint did not persist for too long. With the repeated encouragements to drink from Ling Han and the others, he was soon completely drunk. He was swaying on his seat, and could not even distinguish how many people were on Ling Han's side. Ling Han reserved a room and helped Yu Kaiyu inside. He wanted to continue to probe for information for his mother's location. My aunt? My aunt is imprisoned in the Blackwater prison. Now that Yu Kaiyu was drunk, he could not keep any secrets at all. He immediately answered when asked, which made Ling Han shake his head. In future, he should either keep him ignorant of any important matters, or ensure that Yu Kaiyu would not get drunk. Otherwise, it was as if this guy's mouth had no closing, and would spill everything out. Where is the Blackwater prison? And what kind of environment is that? Ling Han asked. At the same time, he felt anger. His mother was actually held in a prison, which made him almost go berserk and rage. The Blackwater prison is where the sect imprisons criminals. The majority of the inmates are enemies of our sect, but there are also disciples who have betrayed the sect. Yu Kaiyu shook his head dizzily. When I was little, I could still visit Aunt, but those bastards from the AO clan kept squeezing us out. It was only 3 years ago that Aunt was imprisoned into the Blackwater prison, and from then on, I could no longer visit Aunt. Woo, my pitiful aunt. She is forced apart from her husband and child, and has been imprisoned in a place with complete darkness. These bastards from the Ao clan, when I reach the spiritual infant tier, I'll strangle each one I see. Ling Han nodded. This cousin was on his side. How are the defenses of the Blackwater prison? You want to break into the prison? That's impossible. Yu shook his head repeatedly, as if he wanted to shake his head off his shoulders. There are 2 elites of the flower blossom tier who take turns to stand guard there, and even a fly would not be able to fly in without their knowledge. Ling Han could not help but tap the table in thought. It looked like that he would at least need to have the battle prowess of the flower blossom tier before he would be able to break into the Blackwater prison and rescue his mother. Damn, he obviously knew that his mother was currently suffering in prison, yet he could only sit by helplessly and watch. Yu did not have too bad of a drunken disposition. He was not the type to behave wildly when drunk, and very soon, he had started snoring loudly. Ling Han walked out of the room and went to find Lu Yutong and the others. Zhu Wujiao and Ken Yi were already aware that he had come over, and had been waiting for him for some time. Ling Han asked about their cultivation progress, drew out the returned spirit pills and passed them to them. He had never been a miser to his own people. Later, I will teach you some new martial arts techniques. You will only deserve the name of elites after you have strengthened your foundations in these techniques, Ling Han said. Since these few people were going to follow him, he naturally had to ensure that their battle prowess would improve. Ling Han then went to see Guang Yuan. That this originally very rough and brash guy would actually close himself up in his room like a girl was indeed quite strange. He pushed open the door and entered, and saw Guang Yuan was sitting vacantly, his thoughts seeming to be far away. Big brother Guang. Ling Han stretched out a hand and waved it in front of him. It was only later that Guang Yuan reacted. When he spotted Ling Han, he first experienced a scare, then looked alert before asking him doubtfully, Ling Han? It's me. Ling Han nodded. What's wrong with you? What are you thinking of that has entranced you so? Guang Yuan hesitated for a while. He looked like he both wanted to speak, yet also seemed as if he didn't know where to start. In the end, he sighed, and said, I met a person. An old lover? Ling Han asked, smiling. Otherwise, he would not need to look so vacant. In this world, perhaps only the word love would induce such torment upon one. Guang Yuan laughed bitterly, and said, It's my old lover's man. This kind of development did not seem to be very wonderful. Now that Guang Yuan had brought up the topic, it seemed as if he wanted to vent the frustration he was feeling, and could no longer keep it inside anymore. He began to talk non-stop. When I was still young and came out of Rain Country, I journeyed around in the North region in search of a way to become stronger. During that period, I met 2 people. They were both loose cultivators. The 3 of us formed our own group and journeyed together all the while, experiencing life and death together. One was called Duan Zheng and the other was called Nong Qinyu. Duan Zheng and I were brothers, but both of us fell for Qinyu simultaneously. To avoid damaging our brotherhood, we agreed to have a martial arts competition, and whoever lost would automatically withdraw. In that half-year's time, I cultivated madly, and truly believed that I could defeat Duan Zheng. However, just a few days before our martial arts competition, Qinyu came and told me that she has made her decision and chose Duan Zheng. Thus, I naturally could only withdraw. However, not too long after, when Duan Zheng was drunk, I found out that he had used underhanded means and gotten Qinyu, forcing her to have no choice but to choose him. My fury could not be restrained, and I gave Duan Zheng a severe thrashing. Then I went to find Qinyu, and told her I did not care about the matter between her and Duan Zheng as long as she agreed to leave with me. However, she did not agree. Downhearted, I decided to return to the Rain Country. In a flash, close to 20 years had passed. A few days ago, I actually encountered Duan Zheng, yet he actually told me that Qinyu has been dead for 3 years. Chapter 356, Memory Crystal. Ling Han considered the matter for a moment, then asked, "You suspect that Qing Yu had not died naturally?" Qing Yu's talent in martial arts exceeded even mine and Duan Jingji's, so how could she have possibly died from illness? Guang Yuan shook his head immediately. "I am currently in the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, and Duan Jingji has even broken through to the spiritual pedestal tier. Then no matter what, Qing Yu would at least have been in the spiritual ocean tier 3 years ago. How could a martial artist in the spiritual ocean tier fall ill and die from illness?" Indeed, once a martial artist had broken through to the element gathering tier, they would fall ill only in very rare circumstances. With origin power to protect their bodies, they would not be affected by ordinary ailments. Unless they were poisoned or injured by another, they would definitely live healthily all the way until they died of old age. "Since you have suspicions, why don't you go and get to the bottom of the matter?" Ling Han asked. "I fear remembering her when I see things related to her, and am afraid that the long-suppressed old affections would emerge again," Guang Yuan said, shaking his head. Ling Han laughed loudly, and asked, "How are you any better than that if you continue like this? Where does that Duan Jingji live now?" He settled here 7 years ago, and has developed quite well since. The Duan clan can be considered a considerably powerful party in the Sea Breeze City, with many elites of the spiritual ocean tier under their banner, Guang Yuan said. This was also one of the reasons why he had not made his way to the Duan residence. That was because if he made an official visit, he would not be received, and if he sneaked in, with so many elites in the residence, should he be caught red-handed, how embarrassing would that be in front of his old love rival? Ling Han broke out into a smile and said, "That's all right. We'll go take a look tonight, and conclude one of your preoccupations." Guang Yuan thought the matter over and sighed, but did not refuse. He indeed very much wanted to know how Nong Qing Yu had actually died. Otherwise, it felt as if he had a heavy stone weighing down on his heart. This matter has caused him to be unable to eat well or sleep well, and there were even signs that his cultivation was degrading these days. After taking a look at all the members of his group, Ling Han entered the Black Tower. He wanted to study the thunder battle armor closely. This battle armor looked like it was a vest. It did not have sleeves, and looked like it could only protect one's torso. It was also made from a material Ling Han could not identify. It was made from multiple silver-colored metal plates woven together with a metallic thread. Upon close examination, every single metallic plate had a pattern on it. They were all different from each other, and looked a bit like the lettering on the indestructible heaven scroll, but also looked as if they were drawings. If that was really the case, then the thunder battle armor would have come from a very important background. It was possible that it was not any mere spirit tool, but could possibly be a god tool that had come from the realm of gods. However, this battle armor was extremely severely damaged. There was a hole on the chest part, and when he compared it, it was precisely the spot lying over the right side of the chest, where the heart was. In other words, someone had worn the thunder battle armor yet had his heart pierced with a single strike from his opponent. The wearer had naturally died, whereas the battle armor experienced fundamental damage. There was now no one capable of reviving the battle armor, but because the material it was forged from was definitely level 9 or perhaps even level 10, it could not be penetrated by any kind of weapon. Thus, should one wear it, it could still be effective as a protective covering, which could be considered of little value when compared to its real worth. If that hadn't been the case, how could the Winter Moon sect possibly use it as a prize? However, it was originally arranged to be won by the 7 sons of Ao family, and this was also the result from the hard-working efforts of the elder of the Ao clan. Yet, unexpectedly, it had fallen into Ling Han's grasp in the end. Has the tool spirit vanished completely? Ling Han injected his divine sense into the battle armor, and indeed, there was no sign of life from this spirit tool. The tool spirit no longer existed within. Nothing to be done if the tool spirit is dead. It's only that it cannot revive itself anymore. Ling Han rubbed a hand over the battle armor. As long as my martial intent is strong enough, I will still be able to activate this battle armor. Moreover, I heard that there is a thunder-aligned martial arts technique concealed within, though I don't know whether it's true or mere rumor. Let's see if I can activate it. The members of the Winter Moon sect could not accomplish this feat because even the strongest of the Winter Moon sect was only in the spiritual infant tier, whereas this battle armor was at least a level 9 spirit tool. But it was a different story for Ling Han. He possessed a sliver of divine sense of the heaven tier, plus he was currently in the Black Tower. He injected his origin power into the thunder battle armor, but there was no reaction. Then he poured his divine sense into it, and still there was no reaction. This can't be right. Even his divine sense of the heaven tier was actually unable to stimulate the martial intent within? Or was he unable to stimulate it because it was too severely damaged? Then he could only use the power of the Black Tower. With a thought from Ling Han, the Black Tower immediately reacted. Wang, the battle armor began to light up. One metallic plate after another, those patterns lit up and transformed into a language that was completely illegible to Ling Han. He now understood slightly. This was not really letters, but a very high-level martial intent, and if one wanted to try to figure it out, he would possibly need a few hundred, a few thousand, or even more than 10,000 years to do so. It was the same for the indestructible heaven scroll. He stilled slightly, and with another thought, he saw a very small crystal suddenly float in midair. This was actually a space that the thunder battle armor possessed on its own. It was revealed to him after he had activated it, and aside from this crystal, there was a small bottle, but who knew what it contained? This crystal. Memory crystal. Ling Han recognized what it was, and was extremely surprised. Once a memory crystal was activated, it could record everything that was happening around it, but it was only a one-time record. After that, the next time it was activated, one would be able to observe every single detail that happened every minute, every second, and from every angle, as if one was observing from the point of view of a god. This crystal was extremely valuable, and was ordinarily used to record when an ultimate elite was practicing his techniques, which would then be recorded by the crystal and passed on to later generations. Ling Han looked at it closely. There was a black line on the memory crystal, which meant that this crystal had been used once before. Otherwise, it would be completely clear and pure. He immediately injected his divine sense into it. Wang, he instantly appeared in an unfamiliar environment. In this environment, he did not have a physical body, but could move according to his will and appear anywhere he liked. However, this environment was only about a mile-sized circle, and there was a completely white space outside of this single mile. That was because that the memory crystal could only record events as they happened within this limited space. Ling Han's eyes swept over, and instantly looked shocked. A girl with long purple hair was currently speeding through the wilderness, bringing rapid change to the scene. Thus he confirmed that the memory crystal had to be on her, which was why she was the central part of this scene and could cause changes to the scene. And this girl was precisely Xue Xian, one of the 7 elites of the heaven tier from his last life. This had obviously happened after Ling Han had been obliterated by the Black Tower, because Xue Xian's ability was unfathomable. Not even Ling Han could fully figure out her true prowess, but the memory crystal was very vividly recording the fluctuations in her aura. Ling Han deduced that this aura was weaker than the Azura Demon Emperor's, and Xue Xian should have broken through to the Shattering Void tier. Indeed, after he died, there should have happened a revolutionary change to their environment, which allowed Sword Emperor and the others to charge all the way into the Shattering Void tier. Even that crazy disciple of his, Feng, managed to take this step, and they could have possibly shattered the void and entered into the realm of gods. However, there was an obvious anxiety in Xue Xian's expression, and from the look of her, she seemed like she was fleeing. One of the elites of the heaven tier from his last life, who had even broken through to Shattering Void tier, was actually fleeing? Why was she fleeing? And what enemy was she fleeing from? Chapter 357, Xue Xian. Sword Emperor. Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. Setting Sun Saber Emperor. Ling Han watched on patiently. Currently, what Xue Xian was wearing was precisely the Thunder Battle armor. Moreover, it was still a completely undamaged one, and there were flashes of white lightning flickering all over, making her seem as if she was a heroic war goddess. Ling Han discovered, much to his shock, that Xue Xian had extraordinarily long ears that were sticking up tall and proud like a rabbit's ears, whereas her eyes were exuding a white light, as if they were a pair of electric balls. Although he had not seen Xue Xian many times, he still remembered clearly that Xue Xian should not look too different from an ordinary human being, unlike now when her ears were sharp and long and it seemed as if her eyes had electricity running through them. Strange, how was he so sure that this girl was Xue Xian with just one look? The first proof was her hair. Ling Han had only seen one person with purple-colored hair. The second one was her face. Even if her eyes were both shining like there was electricity in them, that face was still Xue Xian's. And the third was the thunder battle armor. It was her symbol. Ling Han had to admit though this appearance was a little strange, it was also a different kind of beauty. At least, it was not something that Lu Yutong and Li Xichan could rival. They're going to catch up. Xue Xian said suddenly. She was naturally not talking to Ling Han, but she activated the memory crystal and was currently in the process of recording. I can sense their aura. Sure enough, 3 figures appeared in the distance, and they were extremely fast. They seemed to walk calmly step by step, but each step would cross a distance of 100 miles, as if they were able to shrink the distance into mere inches. Xue Xian was not slow, but the speed of these 3 people was faster, and in a short while, the distance between the 2 sides had shortened to half a mile. One of the 3 pursuers, a middleman, said, Xue Xian, you are a genius of our race, so why do you want to commit treachery? What has the destruction of the human race have to do with you? He had a head of white hair and his eyes were shining white, as if they were electric balls. The difference was that there was a purple vein on his forehead, which looked as if it was born from his anger, but also seemed to be formed naturally. It was not only him. The other 2 old men also had such veins, which were also on the forehead. The first words were enough to give Ling Han a shock, the destruction of the human race. If any other had said such vicious words, Ling Han would merely think it was nonsense or bragging. But these 3 old men, none of the 3 of them had an aura weaker than Xue Xian, and that was the aura of at least the Shattering Void tier. 3 elites of the Shattering Void tier combined forces, that was really enough firepower to eliminate every single living thing in this world. I have lived here for more than 300 years, and have long become part of this world. How could I stand by and watch as you all do such an insane deed? Xue Xian asked coldly, though she was still moving extremely fast. Obviously, her intentions were not to engage into a verbal battle, but deliberately using the memory crystal to create a record. Xing, you are one of our purple lightning race, and you will be for your whole life, the old man on the left side said, his face cold. We can talk calmly. No matter what, Xue Xian is one of our race's outstanding geniuses in the lower realm. Even if she returned to our ancestral land, she would still be exceptional. Xue Xian, I know you are only momentarily confused, why don't you quickly come to your senses, the old man on the right side said with a gentle smile. They were just right. One played nice, while the other played mean. Lower realm? Ling Han's heart trembled. These 3 old men were not as simple as mere elites of the Shattering Void tier, but could even possibly come from the realm of gods. Hiss, that was extremely possible, the ability of these 3 were above even the Shattering Void tier, gods. Xue Xian was in the Shattering Void tier, but she did not have a purple vein on her forehead. Perhaps that was a symbol that only a god would possess. Aside from that, their auras were stronger than Xue Xian's and they were much faster. All these factors added together made Ling Han come up with the deduction that these 3 were gods. However, it seemed that gods didn't seem as strong as he had imagined. Putting aside the Azura demon emperor who had been split into 9 parts and suppressed for millennia, these 3 old men should be in their best condition, yet why had they still been unable to subdue Xue Xian after such a long time? You do not have to waste your breath. As long as I, Xue Xian, am alive, I will definitely stop you. Xue Xian said firmly. Then don't blame me for being merciless. The eyes of the old man standing in the center grew fierce and his right hand grabbed at empty air. With a Z, a white electrical spear actually formed. Patterns lit up along its body, and it exuded a terrifying aura. Even though Ling Han was a mere observer, he felt as if he was experiencing the real thing. If he was really physically there, merely this aura would be enough to kill him even if he was still the heaven-tier elite he had been in his last life. In front of real power, he was still too weak. With a wave of the hand of the old man, this electric spear shot towards Xue Xian. With a soft exclamation, a circle of electrical light appeared around Xue Xian, which flung out her slender body. She had not only increased her speed, but also changed her course. Just when Ling Han thought that she would be able to dodge this attack, he saw that electric spear also changed direction and continued to fly towards Xue Xian's star. When he looked at Xue Xian, however, that burst of speed was definitely an excessive move for her. It made her face extremely pale, and there also appeared a sliver of blood at the corner of her mouth. It was definitely impossible for her to make that move again. The electric spear chased up to her, and she could only turn around to parry it, putting on a scene of flashing lightning bolts. Z could be heard continuously, and martial intent transformed into multiple electric seals. Ling Han had broken out into cold sweat merely just from watching. This was enough to kill him over 100 times in his last life. The lightning spear reached its target, yet was blocked by a curtain of thunder. However, with such a pause, those three old men managed to come closer, and the four of them were suddenly embroiled in a fierce battle. These three old men were indeed stronger, and it was as if they had an endless pool of power. Yet they gave Ling Han the feeling that they seemed to be deliberately exercising restraint, and had not used all their battle prowess. As a result, even with the three of them combining forces, they were still unable to capture Xue Xian. This despicable power of regulation, it had suppressed our abilities. The three old men seemed to be a bit displeased, and could not help but begin to complain. Suppression from the power of regulation? Multiple thoughts streaked rapidly through Ling Han's mind. With the level that he had reached in his last life, he was qualified enough to come into contact with some hidden secrets, especially when he had visited various ancient historical sites and obtained a large amount of information nearing the end of his last life. There were some previous deductions by his predecessors. They had only been deductions, but combined with this scene that Ling Han was witnessing, Ling Han could definitely confirm with a nod that those deductions were true. It was rumored that the realm of gods had its laws, whereas the mortal realm also had its own rules, and neither was to interfere with the other. Why was a shattering void-tier elite able to shatter the empty void and step into the realm of gods? It was not because a shattering void-tier elite was so strong that they could shatter the world, but because the power of the shattering void-tier had exceeded the limits the mortal realm could sustain, and thus would be rejected by the mortal realm, entering the realm of gods where limits were broader. In the realm of gods, the world was sturdier and could withstand the strain of the level of gods. In other words, it was a relatively easy process to traverse from the mortal realm to the realm of gods because the mortal realm would actively reject one's existence, which was equivalent to helping the process. The prerequisite was that your ability had to reach the shattering void tier, and it was that instant when there was a high chance that you would be able to break through and become a god. However, it was difficult to traverse from the realm of gods and enter the mortal realm. Firstly, it was because the realm of gods was extremely sturdy and solid, so it would be very difficult to shatter the empty void. Secondly, the mortal realm naturally rejected those at the level of gods, and it was of course difficult to sail against the current. Furthermore, even when one had arrived in the mortal realm, a god probably couldn't use the power on the level of gods. Instead, they would have to suppress their battle prowess. Otherwise, they would definitely be rejected by the mortal realm, and directly forced back to the realm of gods. Ling Han immediately had a deduction. These three old men were indeed gods, but their powers had been suppressed. As a result, even though their power obviously exceeded Xue Xian, it had still led to the scene unfolding in front of him now. Chapter 358, Everything was a lie. Xue Xian was currently engaged in a fierce battle with the three old men. Ling Han was extremely shocked. Xue Xian really deserved the name of a peerless genius. Though she was one person against three, she actually had the upper hand. This would really make one grab their head and exclaim in utter shock. Someone in the shattering void tier was actually capable of having the upper hand in a clash against three gods. But that was indeed the reality. Who asked this to be the mortal world, which would suppress the cultivation of gods? And if they were battling on the same level, the ability of a peerless genius to battle one stronger than herself could be displayed to the fullest. However, gods were still gods after all. Even if their abilities were suppressed, they still had a bottomless pool of power at their fingertips. As long as they could drag out the battle long enough, then Xue Xian would definitely be exhausted, and thus captured. And the three old men did indeed do so. They merely continued to force Xue Xian to endlessly expend her energy, neither too fast nor too slow. Xue Xian shouted repeatedly, and scoffed. The thunder battle armor on her body released a white light that transformed into multiple dragons made of thunder that pounced in attack towards those three old men. This was obviously a powerful move, and instantly made those three old men flustered. They only managed to destroy these thunder dragons after much effort. Xue Xian took advantage of the opening and escaped the battle, though they caught up to her soon after and another fierce battle ensued. Ling Han gritted his teeth. So it appeared that the thunder battle armor was actually a level 10 spirit tool. If not, how could it possibly become a threat to three gods? Their battle prowess had indeed been suppressed, but that was still battle prowess on the level of the shattering void tier. Against an opponent of the heaven tier, they'd be able to kill him with a few blows. All those years ago, Xue Xian could only be ranked fourth among the 7 of them in the heaven tier. Had she done that deliberately to conceal her skill, or did Sword Emperor and the others also possess a 10th tier spirit tool that could dominate her thunder battle armor? Ling Han sighed. At that time, he had his whole focus on alchemy, and did not consider their ranking in terms of martial arts seriously at all. He had only thought that as long as he could break through to the shattering void tier, he'd be able to push open the doors to the realm of gods and simultaneously suppress Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, that bandit. He had no idea that there was such a huge gulf between himself and the rest of them. Now, he was very clear that he possessed battle prowess of over a dozen battle stars, and the installation of power from the Black Tower could raise his battle prowess to the next tier, and that kind of battle prowess was practically enough to defy logic. As a result, he did not have any such trump card of martial arts in his last life, but was still able to rank as the 7 strongest in the world and stand equal to Sword Emperor and the others. Now that he thought about it, he felt himself flush. Fuck, a real man doesn't boast about his past achievements. If I ever see Sword Emperor and the others again, I will definitely thrash them until their backsides burst. Who asked me to spend all my energy on alchemy in my last life? In terms of achievements in alchemy, even Sword Emperor, Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, and Nalan too have to obediently address me as Grandmaster and beg me to concoct alchemical pills for them. Ling Han praised himself internally, then continued to watch the scene. In truth, though the battle was fierce, it was only repeating endlessly by now. Xue Xian could always turn the tables around in a dangerous situation by using the thunder battle armor and force the three old men into a flustered chaos. She would then take advantage of the opening created and charge out of their siege, which made Ling Han feel a bit bored. However, the events recorded in the memory crystal could only be broadcast according to the order in which they had happened, and there was no way to fast forward, pause, slow forward, or rewind. Thus, Ling Han could only watch quietly. Yet, after quite a long time fighting, not only Ling Han was bored of watching the same scene repetitively, those three old men also appeared to have had enough. With the thunder battle armor to protect her, if we continue to battle this way, we will not be able to subdue her, the old man on the left side said. Indeed. The old man on the right side agreed with a nod. The old man in the center thought for a moment, then then I shall use a sliver of divine power and destroy this thunder battle armor. Then the regulations of this realm would immediately react and expel you, or even wound you severely, the old man on the left side said, frowning. We can no longer take that into account. If we allow her to expose the secret and the people of this realm were able to prepare themselves, it may ruin the plans that the clan has worked on for 10,000 years. Furthermore, if the reason for the failure lies on our side, those other parties will definitely create trouble for us, the old man in the center said. Fine then, you must be careful. The old man on the left side nodded. It's all right. I will control my power and use only enough to pierce through the thunder battle armor, so the backlash that I will experience from the power of regulation would not be too severe. The old man in the center wore a cold expression. A white electric light floated out of his white eyes, and all of a sudden, his aura spiked up madly. It was only that one instant, and his power had completely surpassed the shattering void tier. God tier. This was the power of gods. Ling Han sensed for the strength of this power, and in comparison, his power as one of the heaven tier in his last life was like a drop of water set against a great sea, not qualified to be compared against such power at all. Additionally, this kind of power had already far surpassed a demon emperor he had faced previously. The other two old men simultaneously shot away, as if they would be implicated as well if they had stayed at their original positions. They had reacted correctly. A crack in the empty space appeared behind that old man without any prior signs, and immediately transformed into something like a gigantic mouth. It opened and closed abruptly, swallowing that old man into unknown depths. Was that the expulsion from the power of the realm? It directly sent the old man out of this world. Ling Han was delighted. The old man had yet to deliver his attack before being expelled by the power of the realm. So now that Xue Xian had one powerful opponent less that she had to worry about, she should definitely have a chance at winning. Yet he had barely finished this thought when he saw that the very instant before that crack closed up, a white lightning spear was rapidly shot out of it. This was different from the previous attacks. This lightning spear was at least 100 times stronger than before, and what was more terrifying was that there were patterns weaving around on this lightning spear, and the might exuding from it was enough to make even one at the shattering void tier shiver in fear. This was the most terrifying attack of a god. It was not power, but rather martial intent, a martial intent that would completely crush its opponent. Ling Han's expression took a swift turn. That old man had still managed to deliver his attack at the last instant right before he had been expelled by the power of the realm. That was too terrifying. Pooh! Xue Xian was not given any opportunity to avoid nor parry. This spear directly pierced through her delicate body. So what if it was the thunder battle armor she was wearing? A hole was still directly pierced through it. Ling Han finally understood. So that was how the hole on the thunder battle armor was created. Ah! Xue Xian screamed. She had received this blow right on her heart, and this spear directly pierced through her chest, so her heart must have exploded. Even if she was in the shattering void tier, she probably wouldn't live for much longer. Ling Han could not help but tense. Could it be that Xue Xian would fall here? Yet Xue Xian, on the other hand, ran like crazy, and as she removed the thunder battle armor, she said, "Boundless Mountain, Clear Harmony Palace Hall has the answer to all. Person of the future, everything that you've been told about in the past were lies. The real answer lies there, and you must obtain it. Otherwise, the calamity will be repeated." With a toss, the thunder battle armor flew out through the sky, and her figure became smaller and smaller below, and soon disappeared without a trace. Obviously, the memory crystal was on the thunder battle armor. The thunder battle armor traversed over an immeasurable distance and finally fell down upon the ground. Every pattern had lost its brilliance, and it was as if it had become a most ordinary battle armor. This condition of stillness persisted for about a few days. Then, the scene suddenly stopped, which was probably because there was a limit to the information that the memory crystal could record. It was full. Ling Han's divine sense automatically left the memory crystal and appeared back in the Black Tower. As the master of all in this place, he could very clearly judge that less than the time it takes to take a breath had passed. Anything that happened in one's divine sense had no effect on real time. It was as if it was a dream. One might have dreamt of living a whole lifetime, but when one awoke, only a few hours had passed. Uncountable guesses appeared in Ling Han's mind. He was also feeling a coldness that came from his very heart. Chapter 359, Unsealing the Battle Armor. According to historical records, more than 9,000 years ago, a massive chaos occurred, a tremendous calamity in which uncountable people died. As a result, a lapse appeared in the fields of martial arts and alchemy. Afterwards, the Heaven Sword sect, the Absolute Saber sect, and various other sects stepped out and joined forces to pacify the utter chaos, which was what led to the peace that the future generations had enjoyed for the subsequent 8,000 and more years. Compared with the absolute disaster at that time, the current fighting and killing were only a small matter. Ling Han had a guess. The huge chaos at that time had been incited by the party that those three old men represented. Xue Xian, and they were members of the same race. They had wanted to bring her back to the realm of gods but were met with refusal, as she wanted to live or die with this world. Ling Han had personally witnessed her ultimate end. Though he had not seen the final scene in which she died in battle, without the thunder battle armor, with her heart pierced, and two god-level pursuers behind her, how could she have managed to escape alive? Xue Xian was a disciple of the Blue Thunder sect, and in this current era, the Blue Thunder sect was still standing firm and strong in the Middle State. It was said that they were one of the major parties that stood against the chaos all those years ago. In that case, Xue Xian's race probably didn't have anything to do with the Blue Thunder sect. They had only discovered that there was a member of their race in the Blue Thunder sect and thus had the intention of bringing her back to the realm of gods. Jiang Yu Feng and the others, several hundred elites of the Heaven tier combined together, battled an ultimate elite of the Shattering Void tier. According to the time, that person could very possibly be an invader from the realm of gods, or even a god himself. However, because he was suppressed by the power of the realm, he could only possess the battle prowess on the level of the Shattering Void tier. So ultimately, he was dragged into a battle of resilience by so many elites of the Heaven tier, then killed through their combined forces? Theoretically, that was probable. But the problem here was, why did the realm of gods want to invade this world? It was public opinion that the realm of gods should be rich in resources, and divine herbs would be growing everywhere there. Simply picking any one of them and swallowing it would allow a normal person to immediately become a god. Even if he was not able to become a god, then he should still at least shoot up to the Heaven tier, or the Shattering Void tier. What feature of this world would then attract the covetous eyes of such a rich place? It was just like how the various parties of the North region were disdainful of the desolate North because even if they conquered the latter, what was the point? Only those minor, insignificant parties would think of striving for a niche in the desolate North. Could it be that the realm of gods had such parties as well? They could no longer survive in the realm of gods, and so decided to travel to this world? No, that was not right. Those three old men said that they wanted to bring Xue Xian back, which meant that they had no plans to stay here for a long time. Additionally, Xue Xian mentioned that they wanted to destroy the whole human race. That was not something a conqueror would do. Without subjects, was a ruler still a ruler? Most important were Xue Xian's last words. She said that everything the future generation heard were lies. What could that mean? In terms of her era, she must have been talking about that huge calamity that had happened about 10,000 years ago. It was not true. It was only a lie. Ling Han could not help but feel a headache coming on. What should have been a very logical story seemed to have been completely turned upside down with a few words from Xue Xian. But Xue Xian was so determined to send out these words even if it meant that she would die in battle, so how could she possibly be joking around? That was definitely impossible. It appeared that he definitely had to make a trip to the Clear Harmony Palace Hall at the Boundless Mountain and find the answer Xue Xian had buried there. He knew where the Boundless Mountain was, the middle state. Of course, it might no longer be called the Boundless Mountain by now. Furthermore, after 10,000 years, was the Clear Harmony Palace Hall still standing? He'd think about it in future. Ling Han sighed. You obviously had the memory crystal on you, so why hadn't you simply recorded all the answers inside instead of forcing him to have to make a side trip to the Boundless Mountain? Small tower, can you repair this battle armor? He asked. No. Small tower moved left and right. This was a gesture it made when it was shaking its head. If it was nodding, it would move forwards and backwards. Ling Han was already familiar with its gestures. It paused, then continued, however, I can disperse the various energies within so that this battle armor could still be used for a while. Ling Han was delighted, then said, then, come over quickly. Small tower trembled slightly, and a powerful might gushed forth. The thunder battle armor instantly floated midair and began to shake. Z, Z, Z. Multiple patterns on it lit up, and then extinguished. However, it was only a short while before this battle armor fell back down onto the ground with a smack. It's done, Small Tower said expressionlessly. Ling Han was not that surprised anymore. It had also erased the tool spirit in the demon birth sword as easily and as quickly like it had done now. Moreover, this was only a level 10 spirit tool that was severely damaged. He put on the thunder battle armor and tried to activate it. Z, Z, Z. Multiple patterns lit up, and abruptly, there were uncountable lightning bolts jumping all over his body. It was not just his torso, but his whole body, and they formed a barrier of lightning. Ling Han gave a wave of his hand, and Shou, a blazing white electric light shot out into the distance and transformed into a sharp blade. He delivered a punch, and the electric light transformed into a blazing white fist that possessed formidable force behind it. With a sharp whistle, he attacked repeatedly with both hands. Shou, Shou, Shou. Fist chi and sword chi were shot out simultaneously and, compounded by the thunder battle armor, transformed into blazing white swords of lightning and fists of thunder. Ling Han could not help but laugh uncontrollably. This thunder battle armor had at least given him a power upgrade of 5 battle stars. Furthermore, this was only in terms of attack. He had yet to try out its defense, but he believed that this barrier of thunder would definitely not be weak. He was only capable of activating a portion of the patterns on the thunder battle armor now. In other words, with the advancement of his cultivation level, the might of the thunder battle armor would also advance accordingly. However, it could not possibly reach the level of the shattering void tier anymore, because the 2 holes in its front and back were still there. That meant there was a portion of patterns missing, and no matter what, it could not possibly display its strongest abilities anymore. Xue Xian, we have not had many relations in the past, but the choice you've made has impressed me very much. Don't worry, I will definitely find the answer that you have left behind, and not allow the calamity to happen again. Ling Han said somberly. After making this oath, he shrugged on his outer garments. The thunder battle armor was a high-level spirit tool and could actually adapt accordingly to the different physique of its wearer. Thus, while he was obviously taller and broader than Xue Xian, he did not feel it was in any way tight when wearing this battle armor. There was still that bottle. Ling Han opened it and looked inside. There was only a drop of purple-colored blood inside, and it was exuding a very powerful aura, instantly making him feel as if his skin was being pared by knives, like his skin was going to crack. Was this Xue Xian's blood? Ling Han replaced the lid on the bottle. This might be the key to opening the place in the Clear Harmony Palace Hall where Xue Xian had buried her answer, so he could not use it now. He exited the Black Tower. There was still some time left until dinner. Furthermore, if they wanted to go to the Duan residence, they would have to go in the middle of the night, and it was still a little too early now. He had free time anyways, so he called Lu Yutong and the others over and began to teach them martial arts. First was an inquiry session. He asked them to inform him of the difficulties they had encountered during cultivation, which he would clarify and answer. After that, he taught them different cultivation and martial arts techniques based on their different abilities. He did not need to teach Lu Yutong, however. Zhu Wujiao was a swordsman as well, so Ling Han taught him the Four Seasons sword technique. Qin Yi wielded a saber. Unfortunately, Ling Han had not managed to get any supreme saber technique from the setting sun saber emperor. However, there was no shortage of saber techniques in his head, so he found a black demon saber technique which he had Qin Yi learn. This was a black grade high-level martial arts technique, and it was an excellent choice for his current level. It could nearly be considered earth grade. At the moment, Lu Yutong was at the 8th layer of the gushing spring tier, whereas Zhu Wujiao was at the 5th. They had improved very rapidly. This was naturally due to the alchemical pills they had taken. Ling Han warned them repeatedly that they must not be in a rush to break through when they reached the 9th layer of the gushing spring tier, but should rather strengthen their foundations firmly before taking the final step of breaking through. Otherwise, the cultivation that had been accumulated with the use of alchemical pills would be too weak, and it would be impossible for them to climb to the highest level of their cultivation. At night, Guang Yuan finally came downstairs and joined them for dinner. Then, they quietly waited for midnight to arrive. Chapter 360, A Ghostly Manor. Only Guang Yuan and Ling Han were to participate in the movement this time round. They were only going to take a look at things, and not going there looking for a fight. Thus, they did not need too many people with them. Furthermore, only Qin Yi could be considered as an acceptable fighter amongst their group, the others were still too inexperienced. As for Yu Kaiyu, he was still snoring loudly away. After drinking so much, he would definitely not be waking up before tomorrow. Ling Han and Guang Yuan made use of the darkness of the night to move, and wove through all the main streets and small alleys of the Sea Breeze City. Soon, a massive manor appeared in front of their eyes. Multiple lanterns were hung all around the manor, hinting at the tremendous wealth the manor's owner possessed. Ling Han leaped up onto the roof, and as he swept his eyes over, surprise filled his expression. Although it was completely bright all around the manor, inside the manor itself, there was only darkness as not one room was lit. Even if it could be explained by saying that it was already midnight and thus most people would have slept by now, it was still strange for such a huge manor to be completely as dark as ink like this. Guang Yuan instantly wanted to climb over the walls and enter, yet was restrained by Ling Han. "There's an alarm array in place," Ling Han said. Even without making use of the Eye of Truth, he could still sense it with his divine sense of the heaven tier. Guang Yuan immediately stopped. He naturally did not have the slightest bit of doubt about Ling Han's words. This young man was too terrifying. He was only 17 years old, and not only was he already an earth-grade alchemist, Ling Han was also his equal in martial arts. "Can you dismantle it?" he asked quietly. Ling Han smiled faintly and answered, "It's not too difficult." This was only an alarm array, and not a massive array like the Mountain Protection Great Array. Furthermore, because Ling Han had entered so many ancient historical sites in the past, this was the type of array that he was most familiar with. The Black Tower was getting more and more abundant in materials, and only a thought from Ling Han was needed to withdraw them one after another. Soon enough, he had torn a hole into the alarm array and stepped into the manor with Guang Yuan at his side. How eerie! Guang Yuan could not help but fold his arms. Ling Han nodded. From the outside, he had already sensed that there was something off with how dark the manor was. Now that he had stepped into the manor, there was an additional feeling of eeriness and terror. The two of them passed through the garden and entered a courtyard on tiptoes. They observed silently from the corner. In an uncertain situation, it was naturally best to be extremely careful and cautious. However, after only a short while, the both of them looked surprised, and exchanged a look. Such a massive manor was actually as silent as a grave, and there was not the slightest bit of sound to be heard. Even if it was the middle of the night and the residents were all asleep, there should still be the sound of breathing, right? However, this place was so quiet that there wasn't even the sound of people breathing. It was as if all the residents of this manor had been massacred and no one was left alive. They entered the courtyard and began their search. However, as they searched one room after another, their expressions became increasingly dark. There was no one in any of the rooms. There was neither any living person nor any corpse. What was going on here? Let's go take a look over there. Ling Han pointed at another courtyard. Guang Yuan nodded, and the two of them went to search the other courtyard. However, the results were the same. There was no one, alive nor dead. Let's separate and search. After 1 hour, we will meet back at the place we came in, Ling Han said. This manor was very large, and for courtyards alone, there were close to 20 of them here. All right. After an hour, the two of them appeared back at the point of their entry. They shook their heads respectively. Neither of them had found anything. There was not a single person in this whole manor. How could this be? Let's go out first and examine it from the outside, Ling Han said. The two of them exited the Duan residence and waited for daybreak. When the cockerel crowed, they saw the manor suddenly come alive. One after another, people came out of their rooms, and life came back to the manor instantly. Ling Han and Guang Yuan exchanged a look, yet a cold feeling rose up from their very hearts. This was too abnormal. If you look closely, the crowd seemed to have all come from that room, Ling Han said. Currently, he and Guang Yuan were seated on the top of a loft. Thanks to their high position, they could see very clearly. Guang Yuan nodded. I've seen that room before. It should be a very ordinary hall. But it definitely can't contain so many people. Moreover, I've checked it before. At that time, there was definitely no one inside. Not even a damn shadow of a person. Ling Han looked curious at this, and said, then there must be a secret passage inside. At night, they would enter through this secret passage, and then come out at dawn. No wonder we didn't find anyone yesterday. They should have hidden themselves in an underground secret chamber. But what makes me curious is, why would they have to do that? This was the Duan residence, their own territory. What was the reason for them to leave their comfortable rooms and hide underground instead? We'll go back first, then come back tonight for another probe, Ling Han said. This time, even he was starting to feel very curious. When the two of them returned to the inn, Yu Kai-yun had finally woken up, but he still had a hangover and was currently gripping onto his head. Any slightly loud sound was enough to make him bare his teeth in pain. Let's see if you dare to get yourself drunk again. Ling Han laughed deliberately loudly. Yu Kai-yu hurriedly covered his ears and asked, I seem to remember you were the one who had purposely encouraged me to drink? Ling Han laughed and said, go and drink some ginger soup. I'll bring you to a nice place tonight. Yu Kai-yu instantly looked at Ling Han strangely and said, I say, you already have 2 beautiful girls, and you still want to go to indulge in sensual pleasures? It'd be fine for me alone to go to that kind of place. Ling Han was at a loss at first before he finally realized what he was talking about. He couldn't help but shake his head, then said, what filthy thoughts. Pay. I'm not as filthy as you. You already have 2 beautiful girls, and you're still interested in those women outside. Yu Kai-yu expressed his disdain. After Yu Kai-yu meditated for a while and completely recovered from his hangover, Ling Han introduced Zhu Wujiao, Qin Yi and Guang Yuan to him. Since you all are junior brother Han's friends, then you all will be my friends from now on as well, he said very boldly. This was to give face to Ling Han. If it was anyone else, the young master of the Yu clan would not be in such a good temper. He was at first planning to urge Ling Han to set out, yet Ling Han said he wanted to buy some items at the Sea Breeze City and prepare a bit. Additionally, he also wanted to bring Yu Kai-yu to a nice place tonight. As a result, he could only suppress this urge and went to buy some rations as well. It would at least take them half a year after they had entered the Dark Devil Forest, so he had to ensure that they were sufficiently prepared. As the only grandson of the Yu clan, he naturally had a spatial ring of his own. He was initially a bit proud, but when he saw that even Hu Nyo had one when she took out some dried meat to chew on, he was instantly struck with a blow. Furthermore, when he smelt the delicious aroma of the meat, he could feel his mouth begin to water. This guy had really thick skin. He actually went to beg for some meat from Hunyo. And Hunyo, who usually thought of food as if it was her very life, very generously gave him a piece, which made Yu scarf it down with his eyebrows twitching. Gods, how could there be something so delicious in this world? Within a few moments, Yu was completely bought over by Hunyo. At night, when Ling Han called over Guang Yuan and Yu and the group set out towards the Duan residence, he heard Yu deadpan, "Junior brother Han, so Hunyo is your cup of tea?" "TSK, TSK, TSK. You really have a unique taste, to like this kind of young sprout." Chapter 361, Going Underground. Ling Han almost stumbled. What did this guy see that caused him to arrive at that conclusion? "When did you become blind?" he asked in annoyance. Yu laughed lightly, and said, "If you hadn't conned the little girl, why would Hunyo keep chattering to me and say that you are Nyo's?" Ling Han was dumbstruck. Hunyo was a really mischievous child, plus she was clever. She knew that Yu was his cousin, so she switched her strategy to getting on good terms with his family. If they managed to find his mother, then with this little girl's skill, wouldn't she be perfectly capable of charming Yu Hongchang so much that she would recognize her as her little daughter-in-law? And after another 10 or so years, this little girl would have grown up to become a young girl, and for a genius like Ling Han, it was practically a definite fact that he would break through to the flower blossom tier. Then compared to a lifespan of at least a few hundred years, wouldn't 10 years pass in what might seem to be the blink of an eye? Ling Han could not help but shake his head as he wondered what thoughts were flying around in Hunyo's little head. "Since you like the little girl, then just yield the other 2 beautiful girls to me," Yu said, slinging an arm around Ling Han's shoulder. "Ha, ha." Ling Han laughed dryly, and said, "One of them is my little female attendant, and the other is my alchemist apprentice. Just think, if you marry either one of them, what are you going to address me as?" "Pei, you are really too devious, just holding on to them and not doing anything but not letting anyone take over either." "I look down on you," Yu exclaimed, filled with righteous indignation. "Speak less nonsense. We've arrived at the Duan residence." Ling Han lowered his hand. They had arrived in front of the Duan residence. Isn't this Duan Jingji's house?" Yu looked confused. "You know him?" Ling Han asked. "Kind of. He came to pay a visit to the sect before. After all, he is in the spiritual pedestal tier, and is quite a strong martial artist. Furthermore, the Sea Breeze City is located right below the sect, so we are very closely linked together. Now that an elite of this level has appeared, he would naturally have to report to the sect and make his stand clear so that we can ensure that he would not break the rules of the sect," Yu pointed out. He paused, then continued, "What are we doing here? You couldn't have possibly fallen for his daughter who's just a few years old, right?" "Fuck you." Ling Han rolled his eyes. As he dismantled the alarm array, he said, "You'll see later, but I hope you won't yell crazily with your big mouth. Who do you think I am? You think that I don't even have that little bit of self-control?" Yu humphed. 10 minutes later. "Ghost. Ghost." Yu looked a little pale. "Is this place really the home of living people? Why isn't there any single living person inside?" Ling Han and Guang Yuan exchanged a grin. They had deliberately brought Yu around the manor on a tour, resulting in this empty manor and eerie surroundings causing Yu to feel his hair stand on end. "Come on." As they advanced, Ling Han explained the disputes between Guang Yuan and Duan Zheng for Yu benefit. It was only now that Yu understood why they had come here. However, he was curious himself by now. What was going on with this Duan residence? Why had everyone disappeared in the middle of the night? They arrived at the hall that they had seen at daytime and began to search carefully throughout it. However, this secret passage seemed to be extraordinarily well hidden. They had searched for about an hour, but still had not managed to find it. Ling Han stopped and activated the Eye of Truth. Ow 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 ow. Previously, when he had battled the 7 sons of Ao family successively, he had overused the Eye of Truth. Even now, it had not fully recovered. Thus, the moment he activated the Eye of Truth, bloody tears streamed out of his right eye. The sight was very chilling. He quickly withdrew the mystical power. The sweeping glance just now was enough for him to discover the location of the secret passage. It was really easy. However, the secret passage was easy to find, but it might not be that way to find the mechanism to reveal it. Because they still did not want to alert anyone, they naturally could not cause too much damage and use the most direct and violent method to directly crash in. Thankfully, the 3 of them were all in the spiritual ocean tier, and had a very sensitive divine sense. After confirming the location of the secret passage, it would be much easier to look for the mechanism to open it. After over another 10 minutes, they found the secret on one of the walls. They moved a painting slightly, and a dark, cold cave opening had appeared on the floor tiles. Are we really going in? Yu asked with a bit of hesitation. He was not the slightest bit foolish. There were so many places inside the Duan residence, yet it appeared to be like a ghostly manor. Furthermore, there was a secret passage here, and it was possible that everyone had hidden within. Choosing to stay underground when they had perfectly comfortable rooms to sleep in, there was definitely something strange going on. Moreover, Duan Zhengji was in the spiritual pedestal tier, and if he discovered them, would they be killed to ensure that the secret was not leaked out? Of course. Ling Han nodded. His curiosity was completely ignited. Aren't you scared that we won't be able to come back out? Yu asked sullenly, feeling like he really had boarded a ship of thieves. It's fine. I'm here, Ling Han said with full confidence. This was not an exaggeration on his part. With the Black Tower for them to hide themselves in, they need not worry about anything that will threaten their lives, at least in a small place like this world. How would Yu know what Ling Han was thinking? However, he was also certain he could not convince Ling Han otherwise, what more when he himself was curious as well as slightly alert under the eyes of the Winter Moon sect. What was Duan Jingji planning to do? They entered the secret passage and went downwards all the way. It was very dark, and after they had walked for about 100 meters, the stairs stopped. Instead, a long corridor had appeared in front of them. There were doors on both sides of the corridor, which likely meant that there were many rooms behind these doors. Ling Han stuck close to one of the doors and listened for a while. He made a gesture of pushing the door open, and Guang Yuan and Yu nodded, signaling that they were prepared. If there was anyone inside, they would swiftly subdue him. Ling Han pressed his hands against the doors, used a bit of force, and the doors were opened. The doors were not locked. Woo! The 3 of them immediately covered their noses. There was a powerful stench wafting out from inside the room. Shio. However, they still instantly leaped in. When their eyes swept over the inside of the room, shock filled their expressions. This room was very small, so small that it could only contain a large bed. What was shocking was the fact that it was not a bed that was set inside, but rather a coffin. Unlucky. Yu hurriedly retreated. No wonder there was a powerful stench. This was a tomb and the corpse had all rotted, so of course there would be a strong stench coming from inside. Guang Yuan was right behind him, whereas Ling Han was the last. We don't have to look anymore, right? This should be an underground tomb, Yu said. Ling Han shook his head, and said, if this is an underground tomb, then where have all the living people gone to? This was indeed something they could not figure out. Let's go and take another look. The 3 of them continued to advance, and a crossroads appeared in front of them, where even more doors could be seen ahead. Let's continue on. Ling Han was determined to get to the bottom of this matter. They continued to advance, and suddenly, they could smell an overwhelming stench, as if there was a mountain of corpses ahead of them. The smell was strong enough to cause someone to pass out from suffocation. The three of them wore very ugly expression, and disgust had turned their faces pale. They held their breaths. With the ability of the spiritual ocean tier, it was definitely not a problem for them to hold their breaths for about an hour. An underground river appeared in front of them, and there were multiple corpses floating in it. Chapter 362, Secret of the Duan Clan. In one of the large manors in the city, all the residents were living underground in the middle of the night. Furthermore, this place had a horrendous stench to it, and there was even a river that was filled with floating corpses. No matter how they looked at it, there was something very strange going on here. Where had these corpses come from? Understanding flashed suddenly through Ling Han's head, and he exclaimed, "Let's go back." He instantly made a move. When he reached a door, he pushed it open and there was yet another coffin inside. Yu Kai Yu and Guang Yuan came over as well. One of them asked, "What have you found out?" "This morning, we obviously saw many people come out of the room above us, which means that they were all here. But we can't find even one single person now, so why do you think this is the case?" Ling Han countered with a question. Guang Yuan's expression instantly changed drastically, and he exclaimed, "It can't be that you suspect that these people have hidden themselves in those coffins? How could that be? With such a horrible stench here, the mere smell would be enough to suffocate anyone to death. For us, this is a terrible stench, but for some, this is a wonderful place for cultivation," Ling Han said calmly. "How could that be?" Yu Kai Yu exclaimed in shock. Ling Han did not answer. He simply gripped the lid of the coffin and gave it a firm push. Gee. The coffin opened, and a man was revealed within. He was wearing brightly colored clothing, with a lifelike expression on his face. He did not look like a corpse at all. "This is someone of the Duan residence. I saw him at daytime," Guang Yuan said, his voice trembling slightly. He was in the spiritual ocean tier, so he would not easily forget anyone he had seen before, what more when it was something so fresh. He had just seen him this morning. But he was still alive at day, yet lay in a coffin at night, and a horrible stench was emanating from all over his body. How could he accept this reality? How could this be possible? Yu Kai Yu whispered. But the person in the coffin seemed to have really become a corpse, and there was absolutely no signs of him waking up at all. Ling Han shook his head, and said, "As long as it's related to a particular sect, then it would be possible." "What sect?" Yu Kai Yu asked in shock. "The Thousand Corpse sect," Ling Han answered solemnly. Yu Kai Yu's expression changed again. He wanted to refute, but did not have the strength to. Previously, rumors had indeed spread out from the Falling Moon Gorge, saying that the Thousand Corpse sect had been revived. However, the benevolent see benevolence, and the wise do not believe in rumors. The Winter Moon sect did not believe one bit that the Thousand Corpse sect that had disappeared for millennia would once again see the light of day. But seeing this scene in front of his eyes, Yu Kai Yu had no option but to believe in those rumors. Aside from the Thousand Corpse sect, what other party would be accompanied by corpses? How could any normal person bear to live in such surroundings? "Has this sect really been revived?" he asked, his face pale. "There have been uncountable sects that have perished throughout history, but none of them were as notorious as the Thousand Corpse sect. Furthermore, its notoriety had lasted for millennia. Anyone who still remembered it would recall it with gritted teeth. That showed how despicable and hated the things that the Thousand Corpse sect had done all those years ago were. True, everyone would die. But to be dug out after their death and manipulated by another, forced to become a corpse soldier under their control, who could tolerate that? What do you think?" Ling Han gazed at the man lying within the coffin. He had only briefly looked over the coffin just now, but now, upon closer examination, he could detect that there was corpse chi encircling the person lying in the coffin. In the beginning, how could he have imagined that this would be a branch of the Thousand Corpse sect? "We must immediately return and bring this news back to the sect," Yu Kai Yu said hurriedly. If the Thousand Corpse sect really had made a comeback, then not only did they need to inform their sect, they would even have to announce it to the whole world, and mobilize the whole world to stand against this party. Otherwise, if the Thousand Corpse sect was given time to solidify their base, then most probably, about all the graves of the entire world would have been dug out. Ling Han looked like he was listening closely to something. Then he shook his head and said, "I'm afraid we won't be able to leave." Ka, that is indeed correct. A voice suddenly rose up from behind them. Yu Kai-yu and Guang Yuan turned around at the same time and saw that there was a man who looked to be in his 40s standing in the doorway. He was of medium build and had a handsome face. Though he did not look young anymore, he would still be capable of charming the hearts of a large number of aunties. Duan Zhengji. Guang Yuan's eyes widened. Duan Zhengji smiled faintly, rubbed his chin, and said, "Guang Yuan, I was just wondering when I should call you over and refine you into my corpse soldier. But I never thought that you would actually deliver yourself to my doorstep." Guang Yuan's cultivation level was too low, so he did not have much knowledge about the Thousand Corpse sect. But merely hearing the phrase corpse soldier was enough to make one's heart shudder, so he knew that it could not be anything good. His heart trembled in his chest, and he exclaimed, "How did Qingyu die?" He naturally did not believe that Qingyu had died from illness now, and could not help but fly into an uncontrollable rage. "Qingyu?" Duan Zhengji smiled calmly. "Oh, she objected to my joining our sacred sect, so I could only refine her into my corpse soldier so that she would stay by my side eternally." "You're inhumane!" Guang Yuan shouted in fury, flames of rage practically shooting from his eyes. Duan Zhengji laughed loudly, and answered, "Of course I'm not human. Now that I have entered into this divine sect, our lives have transcended the level of mortals. In my eyes, you all are merely food, and materials to be refined into corpse soldiers. Forget it. I can't be bothered to waste my words on you. Just obediently become my corpse soldiers." After he was done talking, he actually turned around and left. "Stop." Guang Yuan, in his fury, did not care any longer that Duan Zhengji was in the spiritual pedestal tier and was much more powerful than himself. He merely wanted to chase after him. However, he had just reached the doorway when he saw a palm strike shooting towards him. The palm was as thin as withered bones and completely black, emanating a strong repulsive stench. Guang Yuan quickly halted and delivered a punch. Martial intent encircled his fist, and he shot out 2 flashes of fist chi. Peng! With this exchange of blows, Guang Yuan was instantly flung backwards, but his opponent did not get any advantage either. He was also forced to retreat multiple steps backward, and it was only when he collided with the wall behind him that he finally stopped. "What is this damn thing?" Yu Kai-yu immediately exclaimed in shock. It was a half-rotted corpse that had blocked Guang Yuan, but it was as if there were invisible strings moving it around. It was actually capable of moving nimbly and freely by itself, and it immediately attacked again, charging into the room. This room was already pitifully small in the first place, and now that another person had entered, there was practically almost no space left even for movement, and it was extremely cramped. Guang Yuan attacked in his madness. He was extraordinarily furious, and wanted to kill Duan Zhengji at all costs. That would be a corpse soldier. It's formed by using some special technique to refine a dead body into something akin to a puppet, Ling Han said. If it wasn't for the fact that the main ingredient to produce it was a human body, such a creation would really deserve to be called genius. You're impressed by it? Yu Kai-yu sucked his teeth. From a certain aspect, yes. However, Ling Han's eyes iced over. This Thousand Corpse sect must be eliminated. I agree with that, but now, it would be difficult for us to even escape. Yu Kai-yu said. Don't worry. I told you that we would be able to leave safely. Ling Han smiled calmly. He stretched out his left hand and pressed down on the man in the coffin. Multiple black patterns appeared. This was the power of regulation that he had obtained after he had refined the demonic qi. In the past, he had merely touched Feng Yan and the latter's whole left leg was gone. Pooh. He struck out with a palm, and instantly, a large hole appeared in the chest of the man lying in the coffin. However, the man's eyes snapped open abruptly. He stared at Ling Han with white eyes, but in the next instant, his head tilted, and he was now completely dead. Chapter 363, Great Battle Against the Corpse Soldiers. Duan Zhengji. Guang Yuan's fury had reached extreme depths. He exchanged a furious series of attacks with that corpse soldier, wanting to chase away this rock that was blocking his way, catch up to Duan Zhengji, and make him pay for his evil deeds. Yet, the corpse soldier, having no fear of death nor the sensation of pain, did not step back a single inch and continued to battle furiously with him. That's odd, Duan Zhengji left just like that? Yu Kai-yu was surprised. It would be a piece of cake to subdue 3 people in the spiritual ocean tier like them if Duan Zhengji, who was in the spiritual pedestal tier, had acted personally. Ling Han smiled and said, Duan Zhengji disdained from making his move, most likely because he has full confidence we will not be able to escape. You can still smile in this situation when we're heavily surrounded? Yu Kai-yu forced out through gritted teeth. Then what other expression do you want me to have? Ling Han laughed loudly, and continued to say boldly, don't worry. Since I've brought the 2 of you out, I will bring the 2 of you back as well. Hopefully not as 3 corpses. Yu Kai-yu sighed. Not as 3 corpses, but rather 3 corpse soldiers. A voice was heard from outside the doorway, yet it was not Duan Zhengji. Instead, the voice belonged to another man. There's someone else here? Yu Kai-yu's expression abruptly changed. Ling Han rolled his eyes at him, and said, aren't you spouting nonsense now? How many people are there in the Duan clan? If they were all corpse soldiers, then wouldn't their cover be completely blown during daytime? They are the real disciples of the 1,000 Corpse sect, and corpse soldiers are merely their tools. A mere boy is actually so familiar with our sect? A shocked voice could be heard from outside. Ling Han nodded at Yu Kai-yu and said, you go and help out Big Brother Guang, and then we'll charge out. Yu Kai-yu nodded and immediately took a great leap. He flew over Guang Yuan's head and charged to attack that corpse soldier. The exchange of blows between Guang Yuan and that corpse soldier had just forced the 2 of them to retreat successively, and with this added attack from Yu Kai-yu, the corpse soldier was forced to retreat even further backwards. Why do I have to listen to that brat? Yu Kai-yu scratched his head in confusion. He had not considered things carefully before he had moved to do as Ling Han had said, but now that he thought about it, he felt a little depressed. He was the senior brother here. Yet Guang Yuan took his place, and shot out another punch of his own. How big was the stone chamber? With the onslaught of these 3 successive attacks, the corpse soldier was forced out of the room, and Ling Han and the others took advantage of the opening to rush out. However, when they saw the scene outside, they could not help but grit their teeth. There were a lot of corpse soldiers, but there were also a lot of normal-looking people. Obviously, these people were the disciples of the 1,000 Corpse sect, and they were the people controlling these corpse soldiers. That's the 3rd elder of the Zhang clan, Zhang Hu. Yu Kai-yu suddenly exclaimed in shock, pointing at one of the corpse soldiers, then turning to point at another. Li Ding of the Li clan. He pointed at a 3rd corpse soldier. Gu Shun Tong of the Gu clan. He pointed out one corpse soldier after another, and managed to call out the names of at least 10 corpse soldiers from when they were still alive. He could not help but look aghast, and exclaimed, you people are really deranged. These people are already dead, and you still dug them out and refined them into your corpse soldiers. Tisk, tsk, tsk. What do you mean by deranged? These people are already dead anyways, so wouldn't it be better to exploit them of the last of their usefulness and make them contribute more to this society? A man who was about 50 years old said. And the 3 of you as well, when we act later, we will try to be as gentle as possible and not damage your bodies too seriously. For 3 people in the spiritual ocean tier, if we're lucky, We may still be able to preserve that kind of ability after we refine them into corpse soldiers. Maniacs. You're all maniacs. Yu shouted angrily. He withdrew a pair of knuckles from within his spatial ring and put them on. They were immediately activated and multiple golden patterns lit up. His battle spirit was soaring like flames of war. Kill them. Those people of the Thousand Corpse sect manipulated their corpse soldiers, which surrounded Ling Han and the others. Limited by their cultivation level and the condition of rearing corpses, disciples of the Thousand Corpse sect were usually only capable of rearing a single corpse soldier, though a few might be able to rear two. The disciples gathered here were obviously of a normal level, and could not possibly possess the 3 lives corpse caskets like Rong Huanxian. As a result, each of them only reared a single corpse soldier. But there were more than 10 people here, so naturally there were more than 10 corpse soldiers as well. All of them were in the spiritual ocean tier and were first-tier silver-armored corpses. With absolute superiority in numbers, together with how the corpse soldiers did not fear death and injury, wouldn't it be extremely easy to deal with 3 people in the spiritual ocean tier? Both Yu and Guang Yuan wore serious expressions, especially Guang Yuan. He wanted to seek justice for Nong Qinyu, so it was even more necessary for him to preserve his own life. Only the weak mourned, whereas the strong would use their fists to make their point. The corpse soldiers had no emotion, and did not know how to speak. With their commands in place, they charged towards Ling Han and the others. Yu and Guang Yuan immediately moved. Peng, 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 and they were embroiled in a battle with the corpse soldiers. These two had not had any experience battling corpse soldiers, and treated them as if they would any other opponent, yet this made their situation dangerous. Because you might deliver a punch to the head of a martial artist and force him to retreat, but the corpse soldiers did not care. You could hit them as you liked, and they would still continue in their path of attack to return a punch as well, or direct a slash at your throat. If a corpse soldier was hit, at most, their heads might be bent out of shape or completely detached. That was all right, they could simply attach it back. But if a martial artist was hit with such a strike, would he still be alive? However, the two of them were experienced in battle, and soon adapted their styles of attack. However, they still could not deal with the corpse soldiers, because no matter how much these things were wounded, it would not affect their battle prowess. So how were they supposed to continue fighting against them? You two are really too weak. It's already been so long, and you are still unable to deal with these things? Ling Han sighed. Easier said than done. Why don't you give it a try then? Yu said in irritation. He and Guang Yuan had to battle 7 corpse soldiers each, and every single one of them seemed to have indestructible, immortal bodies. It was only because of his shocking battle prowess that he managed to hold on until now. If he only had about 9 battle stars, then he would have definitely been overwhelmed by now. Ling Han laughed and said, "You really want me to act?" Of course. Come on, I'm about to die from exhaustion. Yu urged. He put a considerable amount of trust in Ling Han's battle prowess. Let's have a bet then. In the time for 10 breaths, I can kill all of these corpse soldiers. Yet Ling Han was not in a rush at all. Ha! Yu naturally did not believe him. Though he also hoped that Ling Han could show off his invincible might and resolve the crisis, but even he only just managed to hold on. Yet Ling Han was capable of destroying so many corpse soldiers in the time of 10 breaths? That was obviously impossible. What do you want if you win? He was a man of forthright and bold character, and was not one to yield easily either. I haven't thought of it yet, so why don't you promise to do one thing for me in the future? Ling Han said after some thought. Don't worry. It'll definitely be something within your ability. Fine, then hurry up. If you really manage to kill all these corpse soldiers, I will even be willing to owe you my life. Yu called out loudly. The pressure that the 7 corpse soldiers exerted on him was getting higher and higher. Ling Han laughed. His body moved, and he had already charged to attack a corpse soldier. He shot out a punch and black-colored demonic patterns wove around his fist. Pung! He clashed directly with an attack from the corpse soldier, and his whole body flew backwards from the impact, showing that his ability was actually beneath that corpse soldier's. But the strange thing was, the arm of that corpse soldier began to flake off and dissolve, as if it had become an old skeleton which, with the corrosive power of time, was turned to ashes. Chapter 364, The Battle Armor Shows Its Might. If it was an intelligent life form, it would cut its losses and cut off this arm that was turning into dust to prevent the effects from spreading. However, the corpse soldiers, with their lack of fear of death or pain, had become disadvantaged at this point, because they did not feel it at all, or in other words, didn't care about it at all. It still continued to attack Ling Han, as if it was not the one turning into dust. Yet Ling Han took advantage of him being flung away by the impact, and continued to charge towards the second corpse soldier. Like before, he delivered a punch, and the demonic patterns flashed faintly. If these corpse soldiers were human, then after they had seen how their companion suffered, they would definitely have made adjustments to their strategy, and would not attempt a direct clash with Ling Han again. But how could corpse soldiers possess any intelligence? It similarly struck out with a palm strike aimed at Ling Han. Peng, their attacks collided, and Ling Han was once again thrown back, but the second corpse soldier was also beginning to turn into dust. 3, 4, 5. Ling Han shot forwards, and in only the time needed to take 2 breaths, there were already 5 corpse soldiers that were turning into dust, whereas for the first, the effects had spread to its head, chest, and soon enough, only 2 legs were left still running around. This scene was a bit spine-chilling. Look out! Look out! The disciples of the Thousand Corpse sect continued to call from one side, and issue commands for their corpse soldiers. Yet these corpse soldiers were simply battling on instinct, so how could they possibly understand what "look out" meant? 6, 7, 8, more and more corpse soldiers were dissolving, and completely turning to dust. Within only the time to take 7 breaths, 14 corpse soldiers were all hit, and the earliest 6 had already completely turned into dust. The disciples of the Thousand Corpse sect, as well as Yu Kai-yu and Guang Yuan, all wore expressions of extreme shock. With this, they were all dealt with? So simply? Ling Han smiled calmly. He had not drawn out the demon birth sword yet. If he had, with the destructive power of a 10th tier spirit tool, it would be capable of delivering an obliterating attack on these silver-armored corpses. If he activated the thunder battle armor, with the natural ability of thunder and lightning to subdue evil, it was also enough to destroy all of these creatures completely. He had more and more trump cards under his sleeve. So how is it? He asked Yu Kai-yu. You're awesome. Yu Kai-yu gave him a thumbs up. He'd personally fought them before, so he was naturally clear how troublesome these corpse soldiers were to deal with. Yet Ling Han dealt each a punch, easily and happily, leaving Yu Kai-yu no choice but to admit his admiration. Duan Zheng. Guang Yuan roared. His black hair was fluttering in the air, and his rage was about to burn. What a bunch of trash. Duan Zheng's faint voice was heard. I am in a crucial stage of my cultivation, yet I was first disturbed by 3 rats that had snuck in here, and after mobilizing so many corpse soldiers to kill them, you were still unable to deal with the problem. Tell me, then, what purpose do you have in continuing to live? It would be better if you all became corpse soldiers instead. Those disciples of the Thousand Corpse sect shuddered in fear, cold sweat collecting on their foreheads. They all knelt and said, "Please forgive us, my lord. That brat seems to have got a hold of a unique spirit tool, which is very effective against the corpse soldiers." Duan Zheng appeared again. His eyes swept over the ash that the corpse soldiers had turned into, and he frowned slightly. He made a hand gesture, and with a metal coffin slid towards them as if it had legs on its own. It was incomparably strange. Peng, the coffin opened. A woman jumped out from within. Her beautiful features could still be seen, but her skeletal face and arms all proclaimed that she was long dead, and this was only yet another corpse soldier. Guang Yuan's expression changed drastically as he called out in a trembling voice. Qing Yu. Then, his eyes reddened, and he roared at Duan Jingji in fury, "You animal, you actually turned your own wife into this miserable creature. In any case, that's a spiritual pedestal tier material, so wouldn't it be a pity to waste it?" Duan Jingji said uncaringly, then he said calmly, "Kill all three of them." Qing Yu immediately charged towards the three of them. This was only a corpse soldier. It did not have any feelings nor memories, it only had the instincts to kill. Qing Yu. It's me. It's me. Guang Yuan called out loudly. Peng. A palm strike assaulted them, and Ling Han and the others were simultaneously smacked away. They all threw up blood due to the impact. Putting aside Guang Yuan first, who did not have much fighting spirit against his old lover, though Yu Kai Yu was a powerful individual in the spiritual ocean tier, but how could the ability of one in the 8th layer of the spiritual ocean tier be enough to resist one in the spiritual pedestal tier? Ling Han was indeed a monster, but his cultivation level of the 1st layer of the spiritual ocean tier was definitely too low. How could he possibly oppose Nong Qing Yu, whose ability was close to the 4th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier? Furthermore, Nong Qing Yu was too powerful, and there was absolutely no opportunity for Ling Han's demonic patterns to come into contact with her, as he was long smacked away forcefully. The gap between the two of them was a little too wide. Ling Han stepped out and said, "The two of you, step back." He activated the thunder battle armor, and instantly, blazing white bolts of electricity wove around his body. Nong Qing Yu had at first pounced towards him, but when she sensed the power of thunder, she actually forced herself to a halt, and an expression of loathing actually appeared on her face. Corpse soldiers could have expressions too. That was proof enough of how powerful and effective the thunder battle armor was in restraining such evil creatures. How could this be possible? Duan Jingji exclaimed in shock. Was this brat specifically born to subdue the 1,000 Corpse sect? How could the spirit tools he had all have this kind of effect? Ling Han laughed loudly. With a wave of his hand, 7 images of dragons appeared, all formed from blazing white lightning. These dragons charged towards Nong Qing Yu. Spirit tools had the ability to compound qi. For example, after Ao Xing Lai used the Black Star Sword, his sword qi was capable of easily shattering even Ling Han's fist qi. Now, these flashes of fist qi had been upgraded by the thunder battle armor, so how powerful would they be then? Even if Ling Han was unable to make use of the full might of the thunder battle armor. Against this punch, Nong Qing Yu did not dare to receive it head-on, and she retreated quickly. A corpse soldier that had no fear of death would actually flee on its own? This was definitely a rare sight, and struck the disciples of the 1,000 Corpse sect dumb. They practically did not dare to believe what they were seeing. Duan Jingji stepped up and said, "Hand this brat over to me, and you go and kill those two." Nong Qing Yu immediately turned and charged towards Yu Kai Yu and Guang Yuan. "Don't be in a rush to leave." Ling Han laughed loudly, and delivered another punch. The thunder battle armor showed its might, and a total of 7 dragon images appeared in pursuit of Nong Qing Yu. "Brat, die!" Duan Jingji charged towards him. Ling Han did not pay him any attention, but rather continued to chase after Nong Qing Yu and attack. "How dare you!" Duan Jingji was enraged. He, someone in the spiritual pedestal tier, used his full ability, and yet this brat in the 1st layer of the spiritual ocean tier actually didn't even care to pay him any attention? How much did this brat look down on him? Then you must pay the price. He smirked, and struck forwards with a palm that was aimed directly at Ling Han's back. "Look out!" both Yu Kai Yu and Guang Yuan exclaimed in shock. His palm strike hit its target, but only a flash of lightning was seen. Ling Han stumbled a bit, whereas Duan Jingji emitted a muffled humph, a stream of blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. His palm was charred black. This was not because Ling Han had logic-defying power and was capable of wounding even someone in the spiritual pedestal tier. but rather the thunder battle armor was showing its might. Ha 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 ha. Yu Kai-yu rubbed his hands and laughed loudly. If the elder of the Ao clan saw this sight, his nose would definitely be bent out of shape from his extreme anger. But it's really strange. This battle armor has fallen into the hands of our sect for a few hundred years, yet there has never been one capable of activating it. Why, against all expectations, was this brat able to do it? Could it be that this battle armor was waiting for him in the first place? Chapter 365, Imitation Demonic Noise Saber. The thunder battle armor originated from ancient times. The elder of the Ao clan wanted to take possession of it to pass it down to his descendants. Even if they were unable to activate the powers of the spirit tool, merely the materials used to forge it were qualified to be an indestructible defense to protect the vital areas of the wearer. As such, he advocated it full-heartedly, determined to make this battle armor into the prize for the entry trials. He had also made some sacrifices for this to be possible. After all, everyone knew very well that this battle armor would definitely fall into the possession of one of the 7 sons of Ao family. But now, fantastic. He had paid a double penalty with nothing to show for it. More importantly, Ling Han actually managed to activate the thunder battle armor. That was really too miraculous. It was guaranteed that no one in the Winter Moon sect would believe such a thing. Ling Han, with the might of the thunder battle armor supporting him, actually managed to restrain the battle prowess of 2 powerful opponents in the spiritual pedestal tier. This was firstly because the thunder battle armor was indeed an awesome spirit tool, and secondly because whether it was the disciples of the Thousand Corpse sect or their corpse soldiers, their natures were inherently evil, and thus could be restrained by the nature of lightning which subdued evil. That was why such a brilliant conclusion to the battle was possible. If this was told to others, they would likely die of shock. A brat who was merely in the first layer of the spiritual ocean tier was actually capable of standing equally against 2 opponents in the spiritual pedestal tier. Yu Kai-yu and Guang Yuan had already entered a dumbstruck condition, and the others of the Thousand Corpse sect were more or less in the same condition, too, as they were all astounded by Ling Han's logic-defying battle prowess. Hang, that's only a spirit tool. Do you think I really have no way to deal with you? Duan Zheng humphed coldly. With a sweep of his right hand, a long saber appeared in his hand. Obviously, he possessed a spatial ring. This long saber was a spirit tool, and it possessed multiple patterns engraved on its body that quickly lit up. There was a total of 13 patterns, and they all emanated a dim light. The whole saber seemed to be surrounded by black mist. He waved the saber in a quick slash. Woo, woo, woo. Ghastly wails could actually be heard coming from the saber, and it was as if the noise was capable of devouring their brains, and could make one feel awful. Ah! Yu Kai-yu and Guang Yuan immediately covered their ears with their hands, but blood still gushed out from their eyes, ears, and mouths. Blood was also seeping out from between their fingers. Apparently, their ears were bleeding as well. Demonic noise devouring brain, killing the 7 apertures. Duan Zheng smirked. The might of this spirit tool lay not in its sharpness, but rather in its ability to release a demonic noise, and only those who had cultivated corpse chi were immune against it. Years ago, the Thousand Corpse sect possessed 3 priceless treasures: the 3 lives corpse caskets, demonic noise saber, and the pond of the underworld, and this spirit tool was an imitation of the demonic noise saber. It was only a level 5 spirit tool, but it was naturally more than enough to deal with a few people in the spiritual ocean tier. Ling Han was still fine. The thunder battle armor had formed a barrier. This was a level 10 spirit tool. Even if it was damaged, the barrier it formed still possessed a shocking defensive ability and managed to block the demonic noise from harming him. However, this greatly consumed Ling Han's origin power. One needed to continuously feed origin power into the thunder battle armor to keep it activated. After all, without the presence of a tool spirit, one could only use one's own abilities to activate a spirit tool. The best plan to defeat the enemy was naturally to capture their leader. As long as he could subdue Duan Zheng, the demonic noise would naturally stop. But the problem here was, Duan Zhengji was in the spiritual pedestal tier, so how was he to subdue him? Ling Han immediately leaped over to Yu Qiayu and Guang Yuan. He moved suddenly, and with 2 blows, struck both of them unconscious. How could the 2 of them ever imagine that Ling Han would suddenly attack them? Thus, they really had not put up any defenses at all. Moreover, Ling Han was indeed powerful, and that's why he was able to successfully knock the both of them out with a single strike. Duan Zhengji was stupefied as well. What did this mean? Could it be that Ling Han was planning to surrender, and these 2 were his proof of surrender? Even if he was stupefied, the corpse soldier would not. Nong Qingyu immediately charged over with a sharp hiss. I am not going to play around with you anymore. Great Spirit Heaven Instant Movement Talisman, let's go. Ling Han had one hand holding onto Yu Qiayu and Guang Yuan, whereas his other hand randomly drew out a piece of paper, smacked it onto his body, and the 3 of them instantly disappeared. He had naturally entered the Black Tower, but how could Duan Zhengji imagine that there existed such a valuable treasure in this world? Furthermore, after hearing that whatever Great Spirit Heaven Instant Movement Talisman, he assumed that Ling Han had used a spirit talisman to teleport away. Instantly, he released a few roars of rage. "Milord, what do we do?" The others stepped forwards. Pa, 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 pa. Duan Zhengji gave all of them a harsh slap each, and cursed angrily, "You bunch of trash. You can't even take down 3 people." They could not help but complain internally, "Isn't it the same damn case for you?" However, they only dared to say such words in their heads and did not dare to reveal an inkling of their thoughts on their faces. They all knelt and said, "Please calm your anger, milord." After Duan Zhengji indulged himself in a momentary fit of anger, he commanded, "Retreat. Before daybreak, we must leave the city and abandon this stronghold." "Milord, but Elder Jiao Yun is going to come for an inspection 3 days later," one disciple said. "Heng, our stronghold here is already exposed. Latest by noon tomorrow, the Winter Moon sect will definitely send some elite martial artists here." Duan Zhengji waved his hand. Elder Jiao Yun is only in the Flower Blossom tier, whereas the Winter Moon sect has elite warriors in the Spiritual Infant tier. If Elder Jiao Yun was allowed to fall into the grasp of the Winter Moon sect, whom amongst you can bear the responsibility? Understood. They all nodded and immediately dispersed to awaken the others, leaving with their corpse soldiers in tow. They still had to destroy this underground basement. Guang Yuan, Guang Yuan. We are really destined archenemies. In the past, you fought with me over a woman, and now, you have forced me to abandon this base that I've operated for years. Don't you let me encounter you again, or I will definitely swallow you whole and skin you alive, to be refined into a skinless corpse soldier. Duan Zhengji declared darkly, leaving in a sweep of his robes. Ling Han naturally saw and heard everything clearly from within the Black Tower. He was not in a rush to leave, either. In any case, the Thousand Corpse sect was planning to retreat. After they had all left, it would not be too late for him to calmly leave. Furthermore, even if he immediately rushed back to the Winter Moon sect at this very moment, he would not have the time to mobilize the elites of the sect to surround and annihilate them. The Thousand Corpse sect, the Thousand Corpse sect, their spirit was really strong. He managed to encounter them everywhere he went. Anyways, he had free time on his hands now, so he might as well use the time to cultivate for a while. Ling Han tossed Guang Yuan and Yu Qiayu over to one side. He did not plan to wake them, planning to wait until after they had left. He beckoned casually with a hand and an origin crystal appeared. With a thought from him, it shattered with a paw, and instantly, a rich, dense origin power enveloped him. He stimulated his spirit base to absorb it, and within a few moments, he had completely absorbed the origin power that had been so dense that it almost seemed solid just a little while ago. Fuck. Ling Han was astounded. The last 2 days, he had not managed to settle down and cultivate properly, and today was the first time he had used an origin crystal, which gave him a shock. A single star origin crystal required the continuous input of origin power from a martial artist in the spiritual ocean tier for a whole month to be successfully formed. Thus, one could imagine how powerful the origin power inside such an origin crystal was. Yet, Ling Han had just simply absorbed it for a few moments, and the origin crystal was gone. Gone. This spiritual ocean of mine is a bit too big. Furthermore, there are two of them. Ling Han sighed. His power far exceeded an ordinary person in the spiritual ocean tier, which also implied that if he wanted to raise his cultivation level, he needed far more spiritual qi than the average person. To gain, one must first sacrifice. However, if I were able to become invincible amongst those of the same tier, even if that means I have to absorb more spiritual qi, that'd be fine. Anyways, origin crystals are easy to get. Ling Han flipped his hand again, and this time, he drew out 100 origin crystals. Pa. They all shattered at the same time, and instantly, origin power gushed forth like an ocean wave, sweeping around him. Chapter 366, Leaving Sea Breeze City. The biggest benefit of cultivating with the use of origin crystals was that there was no time limit. The process in which a martial artist absorbed spiritual qi and transformed it into origin power would require him to expend his spirit to stimulate his spirit base to absorb the spiritual qi. However, if one cultivated with origin crystals, one could skip that step and greatly conserve his spirit. Thus, the cultivation time could at least be extended to twice or thrice the normal time. One could practically cultivate for the whole day then sleep. When one woke up, his spirit would naturally have recovered already, so he could again continue to cultivate. This was also why the disciples of great sects could improve so fast. They not only had a large amount of spiritual medicine to break through the shackles of their cultivation level, they also had endless origin crystals to speed up the accumulation of their origin power. In only half an hour, 100 origin crystals were completely used up. Ling Han hissed. The rate he used origin crystals at was already so fierce now, then when he reached the flower blossom tier, and the deity transformation tier, wouldn't his body become an endless pit? So how many origin crystals would he need at that time to ensure that the rate of his cultivation would not slow down? Thankfully, I have the Black Tower, which has its own herb garden and is capable of speeding up the growth of spirit grass. Otherwise, how could I manage to earn so many high-grade origin crystals? Single-star origin crystals were practically useless for the spiritual pedestal tier, and when he reached the deity transformation tier, he would need at least 5-star origin crystals to be able to speed up his cultivation rate. In his last life, he had not been as monstrous as he was now. As a result, the alchemical pills he concocted added together with some origin crystals were enough to support his flight-like cultivation rate. But now, he continued to cultivate as one pile of origin crystals after another shattered into pieces. He quickly absorbed the origin power to increase his cultivation level. However, there is no bottleneck to my current cultivation rate. As long as I have an ocean's worth of origin crystals, my cultivation level would still be raised extremely quickly. Ling Han smiled slightly. He estimated that with another 10 days, he'd be able to step into the second layer of spiritual ocean tier. After another few hours, he could hear banging noises, and the whole basement had exploded. This implied that the members of the Duan clan had completed all the things they needed to do to retreat. It's time to leave. Ling Han flashed out of the Black Tower and immediately could feel pressure was buried under debris. He was already prepared for this. The thunder battle armor showed its might and released the terrifying power of thunder. Pa. The bricks all around him were instantly shattered into pieces as he blasted a hole in the rubble. He calmly advanced as the thunder battle armor continuously released bolts of lightning. He very easily walked out of the ruins and arrived on ground level. At this moment, the whole Duan Manor was already a scene of complete disorder. There were huge fires burning, which a considerable number of people outside the manor saw and quickly came to help extinguish the flames. Ling Han used his movement technique and left quickly. In a remote alley, he summoned Yu Kai-yu and Guang Yuan out of the Black Tower. Then, he released a pillar of water that spewed onto the two of them. The two of them jumped up at the same time and moved into a defensive stance. However, they quickly looked confused in the next instant, because their memories were still stuck on that time when they were under the combined attacks of Duan Jingji and Nong Qingyu. How did we get here? Hiss. My head is a bit painful. I remember now, you were the one who knocked me out. Yu Kai-yu stared at Ling Han. Ling Han quickly shook his head and said dramatically, your eyes must have blurred, how could it be possible that I would hit you? That's because I used a great various heaven instant movement talisman to bring us out of the Duan Manor. The two of you could not withstand the powerful pressure of instant movement, so you too passed out. This bluff made Guang Yuan and Yu Kai-yu stare blankly. Neither of them had ever used any kind of talisman for teleportation, so naturally they did not know what side effects would result from its use. They might be of the mind to doubt Ling Han's words, yet it seemed like they had no basis for their doubt. We should go back, Ling Han said. Yu Kai-yu said quickly, we should return to the sect first and report the information about the Thousand Corpse sect to the upper ranks. Junior brother Han, we discovered the base that the Thousand Corpse sect have built here, this is a great achievement. I'll ask our Grand Elder to speak a few words of you and your punishment will definitely be cancelled, so you would not need to venture to the Dark Devil Forest anymore. Ling Han merely smiled and said, that's all right. I was planning to go out and travel a bit anyways. You go ahead and return to the sect to make a report, and I will bring them to the Dark Devil Forest for a stroll. He had already found out some information about his mother, and for the moment, it was not possible for him to rescue Yu Hongchang, so it would be better for him to go and find the two remaining main ingredients for the medicine for Ling Dongxing. Thus, even if this trip to the Winter Moon sect could not be considered completely satisfactory, he had basically achieved his goal. Yu Kai-yu nodded. The Thousand Corpse sect had appeared in this sea breeze city that was practically right under the nose of the Winter Moon sect. This was a huge matter, so it had to be made known to the sect at the very first instant. After he left, Ling Han and Guang Yuan returned to the inn. Guang Yuan looked very awful. His goddess from years ago had been refined into a corpse soldier, and this filled him with bone-deep hatred for Duan Jingji. If you want vengeance, you must first increase your own power, Ling Han said calmly. With your current ability, there is no way you would be able to get your vengeance. You would only be delivering food to Duan Jingji. I am not going to help you. This vengeance is up to you to obtain. Guang Yuan curled his hands into fists, and a strong fighting spirit could be seen on his face. Very good. In terms of cultivation resources, I will satisfy you completely, but whether you are able to step over this threshold into the spiritual pedestal tier, whether you would be able to catch up with Duan Jingzai will still depend on your own effort, Ling Han said calmly. Guang Yuan nodded. He did not want to entrust something like obtaining vengeance for the woman he loved to someone else either. Previously, I had indeed knocked the two of you unconscious, Ling Han said abruptly. I have a spirit tool that is similar to a spatial ring, but it is capable of containing living things. Just now, I drew the two of you into it, and that was how we managed to escape from Duan Jingji. He kept this from Yu Kai-yu because this guy couldn't keep any secrets after he got drunk. How could he possibly tell him? Guang Yuan was astonished. A spirit tool that could contain living creatures, she had never even heard of something like that. However, because of the limitations of his cultivation level, he did not know how valuable such a treasure was, so he was only shocked for a short while. I am now going to draw you into it. You may use the origin crystals inside as you like. First, you need to solidify your foundation with the return spirit pill, then break through. Otherwise, in a battle between equals, how could you possibly defeat the combined forces of Duan Jingji in a corpse soldier? What more when he has an uncommon spirit tool in his possession, Ling Han continued. All right. Guang Yuan nodded. Don't go against it, I'm going to draw you into it now. Ling Han stretched out a hand and laid it on Guang Yuan. With a thought, Xiao, Guang Yuan had disappeared from where he was standing. Naturally, he had entered into the Black Tower. Ling Han took large strides, and soon returned to the inn. Ling Han. Lu Yutong and Li Xichan immediately came to receive him, whereas Hu Niu directly pounced into his arms. At this moment, Yu Kai Yu was no longer here, so the two girls naturally called Ling Han by his real name. Ling Han nodded and said, "Let's go. We should leave." He called over Qin Yi and Zhu Wujiu, and after briefly explaining, Ling Han drew all of them into the Black Tower and told them to cultivate within, whereas he left the Sea Breeze City. He hired a carriage and headed towards the Extreme Yang City. The Extreme Yang City could be considered as the center of the North region. It was very prosperous in trade and commerce. The headquarters the Alchemist Society had in the North region was located here as well as the headquarters that the Spirit Treasures Pavilion had in the North region. It possessed all the most bountiful resources of the whole North region. It could be said that all valuable items would first appear in the Extreme Yang City, be gathered, then delivered to every corner of the North region. He should be able to obtain the remaining two main medicinal ingredients that he needed to concoct the Restore Spirit pill here. Chapter 367, Duan Zhengji's Pursuit to Kill. The carriage rocked and swayed. The journey to the Extreme Yang City would take close to a month's time, and this was only possible because Ling Han had hired excellent steeds like the Crimson-Eyed Horned Beast. It was said that this kind of beast could travel 10,000 miles in a single day. If it had been a carriage pulled by ordinary demonic beasts, then even if the journey took 3 or 4 months, one shouldn't resent the journey for being too long. The carriage was pulled very smoothly. He could indeed feel rocking movement from within the carriage, but it was not very strong. Furthermore, Ling Han spent most of his time in the Black Tower, so there was not much significance whether the carriage jolted or not. Guang Yuan turned his anger into motivation. Added with the fact that he himself had remarkable talent as well as how Ling Han now supplied him with an endless amount of resources for cultivation, it was as if wings had sprouted on his cultivation. He now already had 1 foot in the spiritual pedestal tier. Qin Yi had also begun to attempt breaking through to the spiritual ocean tier. Lu Yutong and Zhu Wujiu, meanwhile, had yet to reach the boundary to the next major cultivation tier, and were currently advancing rapidly on the path of the gushing spring tier. In comparison, Li Xichan's rate of advancement was much slower. However, the majority of her talent lay in alchemy anyways, which made Ling Han very satisfied. He guided her attentively in alchemy, but as for her cultivation, she could just advance her cultivation level with alchemical pill so long as it did not delay her advancements in alchemy. The most shocking one was naturally Hu Niu. After she reached the 9th layer of the gushing spring tier, she broke through to the spiritual ocean tier without any stagnation at all. Whatever barrier between major cultivation tiers and whatever unstable foundation were no issue for her at all. It was as she was born to be the strongest being, so there was no barrier to the next major cultivation tier for her, and her foundations were strengthened the moment she took the next step, so there was no need for her to go out of her way to do that. Most importantly, no matter what she ate, she was perfectly capable of transforming the food into her own origin power. Thus, she was constantly improving. Ling Han had sparred with Hu Niu before. Under ordinary conditions, he was actually not the little girl's equal. He had to use a mystical power like the Eye of Truth to be able to glimpse the little girl's movements, and even then, they still tied. The little girl's speed was really incomparably awesome, making Ling Han unable to display his ability even though he was stronger. A few days later, they had left the jurisdiction of the Winter Moon sect, advancing towards the Extreme Yang City. Zilialu, the carriage suddenly halted. Ling Han just happened to be in the carriage, and he only heard the carriage driver shout, "This is a carriage of the Sun business. Who dares to rob this carriage? Hang, let the person inside come out." A cold humph was heard. Ling Han's brow wrinkled into a frown. It was Duan Zhengji. He opened the carriage door, and indeed, he saw that Duan Zhengji was currently standing about 10 meters away from the carriage. The latter wore a large felt hat on his head to block the sunlight. After a member of the Thousand Corpse sect cultivated corpse chi, though they did not fear sunlight, they disliked it immensely. This guy actually chased him all the way here? Ling Han leaped down from the carriage and said, "You all leave first and wait for me 10 miles ahead of here. If I am not able to make it there within an hour, then you all no longer need to wait for me." When the carriage driver heard Ling Han say this, he was naturally pleased that he would get to relax. Usually, they would have the responsibility to protect their employer. Duan Jingji did not stop them either. His target was Ling Han, and as for the two carriage drivers, it did not matter to him whether they lived or died. "You are really considerate. You obviously know that there are elites of the Winter Moon sect searching for you, and you still dare to search for me in the city. Moreover, you even successfully found me." Ling Han shook his head, seemingly slightly surprised. Duan Jingji smirked coldly and said, "If I do not behead you, what face do I have to face Elder Jiu Yun?" Ling Han grinned and said, "Are you really that confident that you can take me down? If you had not had the instant movement talisman, how is it possible that you would be able to escape from me?" Duan Jingji sneered. "I don't believe you would still have more of such a precious item." "Then, I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you," Ling Han said, smiling, and directly flashed into the Black Tower. Unless he used the one-time installation of power from the Black Tower, with his current cultivation level of the first layer of the spiritual ocean tier, there was no way he would be capable of killing an opponent in the spiritual pedestal tier, mainly because there was too much of a power gap between them. When the power gap was wide to a certain extent, then it would become a dominating factor. As the saying went, enough power would be able to defeat 10,000 techniques. That was something that could not be compensated by any kind of technique. Moreover, he still had to leave Duan Jingji to Guang Yuan. If such a huge feud was not settled by Guang Yuan's own hand, then Guang Yuan would not be able to rest in peace even after his death. Duan Jingji was astonished. He had not foreseen that Ling Han would actually still possess another instant movement talisman. One had to understand that this kind of object was really too precious. It was a divine item that could preserve your life. Furthermore, it had disappeared since the ancient times. And Ling Han not only had it had more than one. This stunned him completely. Now that this brat has been contaminated by the Yin Qi in the giant tomb, he will not be able to hide from my nose within this half-year's time. I will definitely find him again and kill him, he declared inwardly. Ling Han cultivated in the Black Tower for a while, then left in a flash. Hunyo followed him out as well. The little girl was planning to cling on to him again. Ling Han thus held on to her small hand and walked forwards. Indeed, 10 miles ahead, that carriage was waiting for him. When the two carriage drivers saw Ling Han actually appear with a little girl in tow, they could not help but be extremely astonished. Who would experience such a thing, encountering an enemy in the middle of their journey? But eventually when he reappeared, he had a delicate, pretty little girl with him. Ling Han naturally did not pay attention to their confusion, and had no intention to explain either. He and Hunyo both boarded the carriage and continued on their journey. However, after only 1 day had passed, Duan Jingji had once again caught up to them, and Ling Han used the same trick, which was entering back into the Black Tower. He had originally thought that it was because of the carriage. As a result, this time, he had the carriage return. He'd just have to hire another. However, after only another day, he was once again stopped by Duan Jingji. He shook off Duan Jingji for the 3rd time, and even changed his appearance again in the Black Tower. He hired a 3rd carriage, but after only a day, Duan Jingji still found him for the 4th time. So you are even proficient in changing your appearance?" Duan Jingji sneered. Ling Han rubbed his chin and said, "In that case, then you should have some kind of unique trick that allows you to detect me from a very far location, and not because you are especially smart and found me through some clues I left behind. You can slowly make your guesses." Duan Jingji would naturally not reveal the secret. Who knew how many instant movement talismans Ling Han still had on him? "Then, according to our old rules, I should leave," so you need not see me off. Ling Han did not continue to say any more unnecessary words and immediately entered the Black Tower. Duan Zhengji was astonished. How many instant movement talismans did this guy actually have? Why did it seem like they were endless? With a leap, he began to once again search for Ling Han as far as the eye could see. After entering the Black Tower, Ling Han immediately used the power of the Black Tower to scan himself to find out whether someone had planted their martial intent on him or not, which allowed Duan Jingji to find him successfully. But the result was that he was very normal. He could not help but feel curious. What was going on here then? Guang Yuan is about to break through, and by that time, I'll toss Duan Jingji over for him to deal with. Ling Han considered the matter for a moment, then came to a decision. He could not bother to leave the Black Tower either, and so he began to cultivate endlessly within the Black Tower. After another 3 days, he broke through to the second layer of the spiritual ocean tier, and heard 2 pieces of good news. Guang Yuan had broken through to the spiritual pedestal tier, whereas Qin Yi had broken through to the spiritual ocean tier. You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.